Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Troy Grant. From the world of Hollywood comes one of the most popular film franchises of all time, with a quartet of supernatural investigators turned spirit hunters who fight to protect the city of New York from the explosion of otherworldly apparitions that threaten to destroy the world. We're talking about Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is the story of four paranormal scientists and colleagues who form a business specializing in the capture and containment of spirits. Business booms when paranormal activity begins happening in New York, and they eventually save the city from destruction. The Ghostbusters story began with an idea from comic actor and writer Dan Aykroyd, who used his fascination with the paranormal combined with practical science to craft a story based on the concept of capturing ghosts. Aykroyd initially envisioned the story as a feature film starring himself and best friend John Belushi as time-traveling, ghost-busting adventurers. But following Belushi's death in 1982, the project came to a standstill until director Ivan Reitman joined Aykroyd and Harold Ramis on rewriting the script. The film began production in October of 1983. The movie featured the city of New York as the backdrop, grounding the otherworldly events of the story with the real world around the cast. The movie was also filmed in Los Angeles, with shooting eventually wrapping in January of 1984. Ghostbusters was released on June 8, 1984 and received immediate praise from critics and moviegoers alike. The movie grossed nearly $300 million on a budget of just $30 million and spawned a sequel 5 years later in 1989. While Ghostbusters 2 did not reach the heights that the first film enjoyed, the sequel did firmly establish the cast and story in American pop culture. Ghostbusters crossed over into the world of animation with The Real Ghostbusters, a cartoon which began in 1986 and ran for 140 episodes over 6 years. A second animated series followed, as did comic books, a video game, and merchandise. Though a third film starring the original cast was discussed for years, the project never got off the ground. A Ghostbuster reboot was released in 2016, but failed to capture the magic of the original story and ultimately flopped at the box office. However, a long-awaited third film based in the original Ghostbusters continuity is slated for release in November of 2021. Ghostbusters Afterlife joins a new cast with the stars of the first two films, with a brand new story set in the Ghostbusters universe. The long-lasting popularity and overall cultural impact of the Ghostbusters franchise is evident, even after nearly 40 years since its release. The devoted fan base, along with the brand new chapter on the horizon, means that the Ghostbusters story is far from over. And that's the lowdown on Ghostbusters. The idea of 80s pop culture, stuff that we loved as kids. And if you're an 80s kid like I am, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Stuff that has been recreated, that has been represented, redone, rehashed, done to death in some cases. And for a lot of middle-aged white guys like myself who sit back and complain about just about everything, we hate a lot of the retreads. Not me personally, but I know who my kind are and what they look like. And a lot of us are just flat out freaking ridiculous. So having said all that, I do not basically hate on anything that's redone for the sake of hating on it. I'm not one of those guys that goes, they're destroying my childhood. I don't care about any of that stuff. The Transformers for me will always be the 80s cartoon and the comic books. I don't really care what any other fancy pants director decides to do with it. He can butcher it all he wants. He didn't actually kill Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime died in the movie and then was brought back later. You want to know how I know that? Because it happened in the freaking cartoons, which is canon for me, so I don't care what they do. They want to screw up G.I. Joe? Screw it up. I don't care. If they ever decide to do Thundercats for real or Mask, go ahead and screw it up. You're not going to affect what I grew up with, and I'm still going to love the original source material as much as I ever have, even today. Yes, I'm an overgrown man-child. So one of the properties that falls into this little line of things that I'm talking about here today is, of course, Ghostbusters. We saw with the redo when, again, another fancy pants director said, hey, I got a great idea. Let's just take this thing that everybody loves and let's just screw it up. And everybody in the cast said, yeah. And everybody on our side of the fence said, no, and so it tanked. We'll get into that just a scoosh here today, just a little bit. But mostly we're going to talk about the original source material, which again, no kids, no one ruined it for you, no one ruined it for me, and no one certainly ruined it for Troy. So let's get into it. Ghostbusters. Troy, we've talked before here on the 6M about favorite films, about classics. Ghostbusters for me was an instant classic the moment it came out. I've watched it multiple times over the years. It's always going to be a personal favorite. Where does this film fall for you in the grand scheme of things?
100% agree. Instant classic. It's a film that I grew up on. I remember seeing it at a really young age, and absolutely loved it. And it's one of those films that over here in the UK, more often than not, usually around this time of year, they'll put it on TV on a Sunday. You can guarantee come around kind of Halloween time, like around the fall, they'll put Ghostbusters on. And even though I own it on Blu-ray, even though I know it's on streaming platforms, there's nothing like watching like Sunday afternoon classic film on the TV. Um, yeah, I absolutely love this. As I say, it's without a doubt in my top 10 of all time, possibly
I,
top five.
ooh, that high,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah, possibly top five, definitely top 10. But yeah, it's such a good film.
I would have said that at one time, but when the Marvel Cinematic Universe happened, ooh, that made it tough.
I mean, that's difficult. I have a top 10 just based on the Marvel Cinematic
Oh,
Universe. That like,
that's totally
it's
doable.
there's so many of them like that deserve you can just have a separate top 10 for that because yeah, at least 3 or 4 of those would have to
Oh,
go
for
into an
sure.
overall one. So, yeah, they get their own little thing.
Oh, for sure. And I'm with you on the Sunday matinee thing. Like full screen, picture
Mhm,
quality isn't great. It's a little
mhm.
grainy. They
Yeah.
go to commercial and come back, and you're like, they cut out a scene. I'm not
Yeah.
stupid.
Oh, man. Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah, yeah,
know?
yeah. Yeah. Especially when there's
Um,
like I don't know, because I know like the certification of films has kind of changed over the years, and there's certain stuff they could get away with back in kind of the 80s, early 90s that maybe isn't as passable now. And you see stuff and you go, hang on a minute.
yeah.
I can see where you've made the cut there. I can see where you've taken that out. I know what the original line is.
And it's like the Warner Brothers cartoons, right? You can't
Hmm.
do a lot of that stuff anymore because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't show characters shooting each other in the head with a pistol. It's kind of not
It's
kosher
good.
anymore.
It's not okay.
Yeah. Funny how that happened, but yeah, yeah, you're right, man. For me, it's a classic. It's one of those movies that is it's got a little bit of everything. It's got comedy,
Hmm.
it's got action, it's got a little bit of a love interest, it's got some horror in it. Um,
Sci-fi, fantasy,
yeah.
just ticks all the boxes, and it's
And
also got a banging soundtrack as well.
yes. Oh, we'll get into that too.
Oh, yeah.
And I mentioned Marvel. This film has kind of a Marvel feel to it, I guess,
Mhm.
because it's in the heart of New York City.
Yep,
And long before we saw people praising the Avengers and Avengers film, we got the Ghostbusters in full gear in broad daylight, and
yep.
people are clapping for them. I'm like, this kind of feels like Spider-Man to me a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's
I'd
good
not
stuff.
thought of it like that, but yeah.
Uh, so we'll get into the cast here before we really jump into this thing. The quartet that makes this thing all work. I mean, Saturday Night Live alums, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, of course, Harold Ramis. And we don't want to leave out Ernie Hudson. I mean, I don't think he
Mhm.
gets as much press.
No.
Uh, it's a shame. The way they brought him into the movie kind of feels like he's an afterthought. Had he been there from the beginning,
Mm,
I- in a different world, if this thing had been told, the story been told differently, the movie begins with Ernie Hudson joining the team, and you
mhm.
get to join the team through Ernie Hudson. So he's your way into the story
Yeah.
instead of your way being in through Peter Venkman and the other
Mhm.
guys, which is kind of weird.
There's an interesting story behind why Winston's character is very minimal in the film. Originally, they wanted Eddie Murphy to play the role
Mm,
of Winston, and he
right.
wasn't able to do it. He instead went off and actually did Beverly Hills Cop. And
Mm,
so, because he wasn't able to do the role, they just reduced it to obviously what it is now. Um, but there was apparently before that happened quite an elaborate backstory. Eddie Murphy declined that role. Obviously, it was rewritten, and then the earlier version of the script had a bit more of an elaborate backstory about Winston's character. He was apparently an Air Force demolitions expert. Um, And then, as I say, they kind of changed the role dramatically, and you kind of get no real backstory on him, and it just almost feels like he's got shoehorned in, like kind of
Yeah,
halfway
yeah.
through, like almost a bit of an afterthought. There was an interview of him a few years ago where he says that he loves the character, loves the movie and stuff, but he did feel like he was a guy that was just kind of there. He's thankful for being cast in the movie and appreciates a lot of the fan response that he gets. And I think fans recognize that it would have been nice for him to have a bigger part. So when you get these Comic Con events and he's there, sort of thing, there's always a big turnout for it. I think a lot of that comes down to, well, it could have been just as big a character as the rest, and that wasn't there. But yeah, it's it's an interesting one as to why that was kind of reduced, and I think a bit of backstory would have gone a long way.
And it probably goes back to the notion of when something feels like that, a lot of times that's the truth. So it
Mm,
felt like it was, even after all these years later, you're watching it going, this feels like, why did they add him? What? And then you find out that backstory, like, oh, well, this is why it feels that way, because that's kind of how it was.
hmm Yeah, yeah,
And no regrets from Eddie Murphy, obviously. He
yeah.
made another instant classic with Beverly Hills Cop.
hmm Interestingly, like speaking of that kind of the quartet, that's something that I'm always interested in when I watch films and do a bit of reading on films and the backstory and the casting and stuff like that, and how many actors were kind of initially wanted for that role. There's a documentary on Netflix at the moment called The Movies That Made Us, which is really
Mm,
good. And I've
yeah.
just watched the Back to the Future one, and they talk about what's his name? Is it Eric Stoltz that was originally cast as Marty McFly?
Those screen tests are wild.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It feels like a totally different movie.
Yeah.
But I always like reading that. Oh, okay. Well, this person was considered, and this person read for the role, and they weren't considered, or rather, they weren't chosen for X, Y, and Z reason. There's a really interesting one about all of the roles that Mel Gibson turned down and was initially lined up for the Terminator, and initially for the lead role in Gladiator, and a few other stuff
Right.
like that.
Wow.
Interestingly, for Ghostbusters, Michael Keaton turned down the role of Venkman and Egon.
Mm.
Venkman's role was originally written for John Belushi, but while they were
Mhm.
writing it, John Belushi passed away.
Right, I knew that much.
Chevy Chase turned down the role of Venkman, and he said that the script that was used in the movie wasn't the original that he read, and the original was much, much darker. Christopher Walken, John Lithgow, Christopher Lloyd, and Jeff Goldblum were all also considered for the role of Egon. So really
Ooh.
interesting to kind of think how that could have gone had some of those actors been in, and just that last four there for the role of Egon I can envisage all four of those bringing something quite different to the character, and they're all in that kind of same ilk of actors, like a little bit extrovert, like a little bit kind of like sort of a bit edgy sort of thing. So yeah, really really interesting. And how
I could totally picture Michael Keaton, and Jeff Goldblum in those 2 roles, and I think it
yeah.
still would have been a hit.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And this for Michael Keaton, this was pre-Batman as well, wasn't it? Because
Mhm.
Batman was 89, I think.
89, yes.
Yeah. Um, and Harold Ramis obviously went on to play Egon, but only intended to write the film. But because they couldn't find anyone suitable after several people had turned it down or read for it and decided it wasn't for them, he felt that he was the best person suited for the role. So that's, yeah.
And he's got a very subdued performance,
Mm.
in both films. It's
hmm
very laid back, and, like, he's got some great lines, but at the same time, it's not exactly stealing the scenes when he's on camera either.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
He made a conscious I read somewhere he made a conscious decision to not smile for the entire film, like intentionally not smile. And I'd never noticed it before until I watched it back the other day for this. And there's a bit right at the very end of the film where he cracks like a smirk. That's the only
Yes.
time throughout the entire film.
Yeah.
Just
I
these little
mean,
nuances that you pick up on.
Goldblum would have chewed the scenery had he had that
Oh,
role,
yeah, yeah.
because he's that kinda guy. But
hmm
I love Michael, we're not even talking about this movie yet. I love Michael Keaton as freaking Peter Venkman. I think he would
Yeah,
have killed it,
yeah, yeah. Somewhere in
because
an alternative timeline that happened.
somewhere in the multiverse, Doctor Strange has the Watcher has watched it. and he's seen it unfold. Because Bill Murray, for as great as he is, and he's so natural and doesn't have to try very hard at anything to be
Mhm.
good. But there's a lot of moments in this movie and a lot of other things he's done where you're like, that wasn't in the script. He's not, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? He's ad libbing. You can so
Well,
feel it in this movie.
interestingly, and everything that I read up about this as well is that most of his lines were ad libbed, and the majority of scenes in the film didn't go exactly to script, and there were a lot of bits that were just ad libbed and left in. But a big percentage of Bill Murray's stuff is just ad lib there
Yeah.
off the cuff.
Yeah. Isn't
Which
that
for
crazy?
someone like him, you go, well, of course it is. It's Bill Murray. Of course it was ad libbed. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't it be?
Yeah.
He doesn't need a script.
This the same guy that, as of the last time I heard this story, I'm sure it's probably still true. No internet, no cell phone, no connection, no agent. That he has an old fashioned answering machine. So when you call the number, if you're trying to reach out to him about a part, that's how you're getting a hold of him. Now I don't know
Brilliant.
if all that still applies, but that's him totally.
I want that to still be true.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah. I got a friend like that who has no tech. He got internet like last year.
Really.
Last year. He's
Just
my age,
completely off the
okay?
grid sort of thing.
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, we've all been kind of afraid he's, in the woods building bombs and stuff. But I mean, it's not gone that far. You know what I mean?
It's like what's his name's role? John Malkovich's role in Red. Have you seen
Yes.
that? Where he just lives in the bunker, just completely off grid. Just like such strange man doing down there, completely off the grid, who can't get in contact with him. Like, what's he doing?
Yes. And you mentioned Ramis. I mean, of course, Ramis and Aykroyd wrote this film, and Aykroyd, because there's a great YouTube channel. I would give it a shout out. Super Covoid Cinema, I think is the name of it. How'd that come to my head? But basically, what it is it's a channel that takes a look at what if scripts that were supposed to have happened that never got made,
Hmm.
movies that never got made. And one of them
Hmm.
was this Ghostbusters sequel that was supposed to have happened X number of times over the years. And Aykroyd had a script written, and there's multiple interviews with this guy over the course of 20 plus years in different news outlets where he's talking about this script, and they were so close here and so close there and
Is this
so close here.
for a third film?
Yes,
Oh wow.
and
Okay.
that they couldn't get Bill Murray to commit to it, and that he
Mm,
sent him the script multiple times and couldn't get him on the phone and all this other stuff, and he wouldn't sign on for it, but then maybe he would. It was back and forth, and
mm,
then amidst all this happening, Harold Ramis passes away, and it becomes, well, we can't do it now because how do you do this without Egon?
mm.
But it's you know Aykroyd, and I tread lightly because I don't mean to disrespect, but Aykroyd through that whole thing kind of felt like, man, is he trying to convince you or convince himself? Because those interviews kind
Mm.
of felt like, man, maybe his hopes were just really high that this was going to happen.
Right,
I
right.
mean, Aykroyd's a comedic genius in his own right and a really
Mhm.
smart guy and a good writer. So, again, no disrespect intended, but this was his and Harold Ramis's baby, and you're right. The whole thing with Bill Murray ad-libbing felt to me, it feels real. It feels like real people having conversations, as
Mhm.
ridiculous as the story can be sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
And the whole thing with Ernie Hudson, Ernie feels like if they had just went and got a guy off the street, which they kind of did.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
He was just suddenly there, like, "Oh, I'm interviewing for it." "Yep, you're in."
Yeah.
And he's, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay." And that happens, like, sort of second act of the film, you're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. I wish the backstory was there, but I kind of am okay that they did it this way.
Mm, mm,
Um, Extended cast, we got to talk about. I mean, obviously, one of the main casts is Sigourney Weaver as Dana Barrett.
mhm.
Um, of all the stuff that Sigourney Weaver's done over the years, tremendous actress.
Yeah.
And the whole Alien franchise, obviously, without her, none of that works
Mhm.
because it's her.
Yeah, yeah.
But I kind of forgotten how low key her performance is in this movie
Yeah,
and
man.
how charming she is through this
Yeah.
whole
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
you know?
Well, before this, like, she was only doing, like, really serious films, and a lot of people were surprised by her casting in this because she wasn't known for kind of this isn't obviously an all-out comedy, but it's certainly a comical film, and she wasn't known for those sort of roles, so it was
Yeah.
an interesting casting, but as you say, like, a really charming performance.
And her and Bill Murray, maybe this is just because I've been a fan for so many years of this movie. as soon as they're on camera together, they kind of feel like they fit to me a little bit. They
Yeah,
don't. It doesn't
yeah,
feel weird at all. Like it should, but it
mm.
doesn't.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I agree.
Like physically, they kind of like if it had come out, oh, they actually dated for a while, would have been like, oh, they totally did. I could
Yeah, of
totally
course they
see
did.
that.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
could totally get that. Rick Moranis says her neighbor is Lewis,
Mhm.
who
Rick
has.
Moranis, uncredited writer as well for the film.
I did not know that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, man.
And who has since walked away from the business, which is
Yeah,
like he dropped off
wild.
face of the earth, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Really, really mad.
Yeah. Like I got respect for that to some degree because I'm like, yeah, he raised his family or is raising his family, whatever the case may be. He wanted his privacy. He wanted to get out. Let him get out. And,
Yeah,
hopefully he
hats off to
banked.
him.
Yeah. And hopefully he banked his money and took care of everything and didn't need to work. And that's great. Like,
Mhm.
wow.
Yeah.
But he's one of those little additions that could the movie have worked without him? Sure. Who else could you put in that role? Maybe anybody that's funny, but God, he's so good at being that awkward, nerdy accountant. Like
Mhm.
she doesn't want to hurt his feelings, but she doesn't really want to be around him too much. He scares
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
life out of her in one scene where he just kind of blasts into the hallway. He always happens to know that she's coming home.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah.
doesn't she like try
It's
to
like he's
tiptoe past his door?
staring out the window, like, waiting for her to come in the building and then knows exactly
Yes.
when she's gonna be up.
Doesn't she try to like tiptoe past his door at one
Mhm.
point? He still blasts out of there like, hey,
Yep.
hey Dana. Yeah, that's great.
Interestingly, we're talking about people that kind of, read for those particular roles earlier. John Candy initially read for the role of him. Again,
Which
would
should
have
not
been
surprise anyone.
yeah, 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 yeah. I could totally see him in that role.
Mhm.
But
And
yeah, he
he would have
does an
been
amazing
great
job.
too.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. He would have been great. Um, and all those guys knew each other and worked together for years in Hollywood. And I mean, why wouldn't you cast people that you're comfortable with and that you know? So it makes sense. I mean, Rick Moranis, didn't he get his start on SCTV? Wasn't he one of those guys?
I
Or am I
believe so,
thinking of
yeah.
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 So yeah, he that doesn't surprise me at all. John Candy, another guy like Belushi, gone way too soon.
Mm,
We just got a taste of what John Candy could do.
yeah, yeah.
Um, we had to talk about Annie Potts as Janine.
Of
Uh,
course, yeah.
yeah, she is so good.
She's superb.
That voice, that Bronx, sort of Brooklyn thing going
Yeah,
on. That
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
go,
what do you want?
yeah, Ghostbusters. What do you want? Yeah, just that real pushy and
Like, I don't wanna be here. I'm just here to answer phones. What do you want? I don't
yeah,
care.
yeah. But she's perfect in that. Again,
Mm,
unless you're like outside of the main trio of this cast, everybody else kind of feels like they were just added in. But where
yeah,
they were added in feels like it works. It doesn't feel
yeah.
like it's I mean, it's gonna sound bad, but Ernie Hudson's character, did we need Winston Zedmore? I
Not
mean,
necessarily.
not necessarily. It worked, but did we need him? That's a good question.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, yeah, I see what you mean.
it probably would have worked just fine without him. I'm glad he was there.
Mm,
It makes sense for this to be a quartet. And one of Aykroyd's pitches through the years about a third movie was that this thing was going to go international. There were going to
mm.
be chapters of Ghostbusters teams all around the world, and
Yeah,
each city would have its own chapter, and it'd be like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
motorcycle gangs or something.
yeah.
So
The Mother Charter in New York.
yeah, which would make total sense actually.
I'd have loved to have seen that. I remember they did the animation, didn't they? Was it the real Ghostbusters? I
The
don't
real
know if that
Ghostbusters.
tapped into anything like that kind of original idea, but I'd love to have seen something like that, where you just had, as you say, these different kind of chapters of it all over the world and stuff, and they dealing with kind of ghosts specific to their area. So I don't know, you get like some old Pope ghost in like the Vatican City, and there's like a
Yeah,
chapter of Ghostbusters that are all like, members of the Vatican and stuff, or I don't know, something cool like that. I'd really
yeah,
like to have seen it.
yeah. This is something, and I don't know who would be the person that could answer this question. One of these guys, I'm probably sure, but Aykroyd maybe himself. Why has this never hit a streaming service where you could do that storyline in a show
Yeah.
and occasionally bounce it back and forth to different cities and then eventually different countries.
Hmm.
Kind of like a CSI kind of show where you see
Yeah.
different, man,
Yeah. Love to see it.
that could
Love to see
totally
that.
work. And just
Yeah.
like the Flash would be like the villain of the week, this
Hmm.
could be the ghost of the week. It'd be like, who are they
Yeah.
having to bust this time?
That's it. Dan Aykroyd, if you're
Man.
listening.
Yeah. Leave it up to us. We'll write your next hit, man. Or we'll give you an idea and you could totally steal it. William Atherton as Walter Peck. This guy was born to
Oh
play a heel.
man.
He's so good at being a heel.
Yep.
I mean, he's done so many things where he's played this kind of character throughout the 80s, I believe. And
Yeah.
yeah, dude, he's wow. I mean, I don't know if you could have done without a heavy of some sort. You had to have a heavy besides the ghosts
Of
themselves.
course. Yeah. Yeah.
And so
On
Walter Peck
on
from the
ground
EPA.
heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Walter Peck
Apparently
from the
his
EPA
his
threatening to shut him down.
yeah. Apparently his character was what's the word? Is it revered? Is that the right word?
Mm,
Basically, like people outside, like when the film had finished up, people would shout in the street at him and often get into like
wow.
confrontation with him off the back of his performance.
Right. Yeah. Wow. He was in both Die Hard movies.
That's it. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
Played
Pelican
the
Brief.
same guy.
Yeah. Well, when it works, it works. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
Why mess with it? Don't mess with something that works. If it ain't broke, don't break
Don't
it.
fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it exactly. Yeah. I mean, the cast is working for me. I don't see anybody else in here that I'm like, oh, why they here? No, I don't get any of that stuff. Now, part
No.
two.
Mm,
Part two is different for me. That's a different podcast. We'll talk
that
about it a
is.
little bit here, but it's it's two different movies in my opinion. But yeah, it's again, this is to me, it's one of the all-time classics. I love that it starts off innocently enough, and I think this is one of the things that made the trailers back in the day was the librarian. I
Yeah.
believe made
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
initial trailers, and
Mhm.
uh, the movie opens with the librarian. The card catalog is going crazy. She runs around the corner. There's bright lights, and you don't see what it is. But then the Ghostbusters theme kicks in. Before we
Mhm.
get too deep in the weeds, we got to talk about the Ray Parker Jr. and
Yes,
radio
boy.
debacle against Huey Lewis and the News
Oh,
because,
of course.
oh my God, when you hear these songs side by side,
Mhm.
you're Huey Lewis and you're going, okay, this sucks. We said no to your film. So what's this about?
Man, yeah, that's whew. Yeah. He
Yeah.
Ray Parker Jr. apparently created this song in 2 days.
Wow.
2 days. The chorus consisted of his girlfriend and her friends. So the Ghostbusters, that's his girlfriend and her friends singing that.
That's
He got
great.
the idea for it when his son just shouted the word Ghostbusters, like Ghostbusters, and came from that. But yeah, as I say, like apparently turned it round in 2 days. And he got the line, "Who you gonna call?" from like a drainage company, like an advert that
Oh,
he saw on
wow.
TV where it said,
Yeah.
who you gonna call?" And that's how that made it in there.
It's a classic song, but then you hear Huey Lewis in the News saying, I want a new
Mhm.
drug. And you're like, okay, I know what happened
I
here.
see. I see what you've done here.
Man. I mean, I was going to say you couldn't get away with that now. I don't know how they got away with it then.
No, you wouldn't
It's
stand a chance now. But even then,
no.
still, like, really, really.
Yeah. I played that for a friend of mine who had never heard that story. And he goes, what? So I played the song side by side. And he's
Mhm.
like, oh my God, he's like, I'll never not hear that now,
Mhm.
which is crazy.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I remember the video to this song. They had celebrities throughout the video.
So many,
Yeah.
so many. It's crazy.
I remember Norm from Cheers, and I know there was a
Yep,
bunch more.
yep.
But it's an iconic song. What can you say?
Of course.
Um, Peter Venkman, Dr. Venkman, excuse me, with degrees in psychology and parapsychology, which we don't discover what his degrees are in until toward the third act of the film, which is odd because he's questioned by Walter Peck. Peter Venkman at the table with the two college students. One is a cute little blonde, and the other one is not. He buzzes. It's shock treatment or a shock, whatever,
So funny.
to see if they've got ESP. He buzzes the guy twice. He's holding up the cards. She's missing them left and right, but he tells her she's right. He's like, look, don't worry. You've only got 75 more to go. They've only done 5 at this point.
It's when he holds up the one that's got the squiggly lines and he gets it right, and he's like, "God, this isn't
Oof.
your lucky day."
Yeah.
He does it. He buzzes him, and he spits his gum out on the table.
And she guesses wrong. He's like, how are you doing? Can you see the
Can you
card?
see
Can you
through?
see it? Oh,
She's like, "No, they're just coming to me."
I don't know this for a fact, but if I were a betting man, I would bet that Bill Murray got a lot of action in his youth
Hmm.
because, man, he's a charmer.
Charming, charismatic mofo.
Wow. Like, you
Really
should
is.
be so lucky to have this swag. I mean, the opening scene of this film, you can totally believe he's legit charming this girl.
Hmm.
But that's good. That's good stuff. He says, "What is this about again?" He says, "Negative reinforcement on ESP." He says, "Hey, we paid you to be here, didn't we?" The kid says, "Keep the
It's like,
$5."
keep the $5. You have to remember this is
Oh,
1984. Like $5 in 84
it's
was big
$100
money.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
big money.
inflation. Um, we get to see Aykroyd's character, Ray Spengler, and
Hmm.
Ray comes busting in as he does through a lot of this film.
Hmm.
Just comes barreling into the room, tells Peter that 10 people saw an apparition in the New York Public Library. Books flew off shelves. Peter doesn't want to go
Nah,
because,
he's
again,
too
he's,
busy trying to schmooze the student.
of course, but he tells him that Egon is already there. And it's funny because when he gets there, Peter tells Ray that he and Spengler have been running their butts off, meeting and greeting anyone claiming to have a paranormal experience. And Ray says, "I'll remind you, I was present at an undersea unexplained mass sponge migration." And Peter says they migrated about 1.5 feet. One of the
uh,
things that got me about this little side convo was that he tells Egon, because Egon's like, "This is big, Peter. It's really big." And he goes, "You know what this reminds me of? The time you were going to drill a hole through your head. You remember that?" And he says, "That would have worked if you hadn't stopped me."
yeah.
What?
That line, interesting. We were talking about ad libbing earlier on. Was an improv ad lib line by Howard Ramis.
Oh, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
That's great stuff, man. Um,
I love that when he introduces himself to like the guy that runs the library, he's like, "Oh, I'm doctor, and I'm doctor," and he's like, "This is Egon." Like
yeah,
doesn't even acknowledge that he's
yeah,
also a doctor. Like,
exactly. Yeah,
also he's super intelligent. Yeah, yeah, no, it's just Egon.
that's great. I did catch that. I did pick up on that because I'm making notes and I'm like, wait a minute, what's his? Oh, there he's not giving him a title. That's funny.
So I'm Dr. Venkman. This is Dr. Spengler. That's Egon.
You know, not to, and
Stands.
we'll do that sometimes on this show. We'll tend to fantasy book and fantasy cast or whatever. I'm not trying to do that here, but let's do it anyway. Let's
Mhm.
fantasy book this for a minute or two. How important is it that this movie is set in New York City, and could it have been set anywhere else besides New York and it still would have worked? New York is a big character in
Nah,
this
New
film.
York. New York is prevalent. Like, yeah, this doesn't work if it isn't New York. Like, anywhere else in the world, you could go London, maybe. I guess. Like, it's
Ooh, I think that would have worked too, actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
but like, it makes sense. Like, you've got. I mean, obviously, there's fire departments all over the place, and we'll get into it later when they kind of they find their base, their HQ. But for me, whenever I think of like traditional like fire stations, I always think of New York.
Yeah.
And so for me, like, yeah, I can't envisage it anywhere else. If I had to, as I say, it would have to be another major city like London. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I'm blanking on that too. I don't know of anywhere
yeah.
else it would have worked.
There isn't
Uh,
anywhere as like I won't even. I'll use it like just iconic. Like when for someone that doesn't live in America that is an American, when you think of America, you think New York City.
yeah, for sure. And
So
plus,
it makes sense.
the city has to be old as well for the sake of the story.
There's got to be history there for it. Exactly. Yeah. So what better city to choose? Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I get that. That makes sense. It does play a definite role in the film.
Hmm.
They speak to Alice the librarian, and Peter has to flat out ask her, "Have you or any member of your family ever been diagnosed as schizophrenic, mentally incompetent, or have you ever taken drugs?" And then he says, "Are you menstruating?"
The other guy is just like, "What has that got to do with it?" And he's like, "Back off, man.
Yeah,
I'm a scientist."
yeah, it's great. What a great line. I mean, looking back on it, do you write this stuff or do you just let him talk? I mean, it's just let him talk.
I think they gave him a script. He was like, "Right, I get the idea. I'm not reading from it though.
Yeah, yeah,
Just I'll do it on the night."
yeah. We're busting ghosts. He's a smart mouth. Okay, I got it. Let's go. Go.
That's it. Yeah, I'll just roll with the punches.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, as we get into this, it kind of because we get this feeling because Peter's already referenced it here as the movie begins. This idea that Ray and Egon have already been down this path, and
Mm,
he's just kind of been there and just
mhm,
kind of trying to get dates with the college girls, and he's not
yeah,
really paying attention. And
mm,
his degrees are in this field, but he's just really smart, and that's how he got his degrees.
mhm,
But Ray and Egon have been down this road, and they fully expect to have something happen. I
yeah,
would love
yeah.
to in the day where it's not popular to say it, I think I'd like to see a prequel to Ghostbusters
Mm,
to
that'd be
see
interesting
what happened, but now they lead you to
how they got
believe
to that stage, yeah.
yeah, they lead you to believe nothing big happened till the movie. This is when it happened. But I'm like, yeah,
Mm.
I'd like to see what happened before this. What led them to this point?
That's the thing because, like, it's clear that they've well, at least 2 of them have got a real keen interest about looking into, like, the paranormal and the ghosts and stuff like that. You're like, well, there must have been something in their past that triggered this. They didn't just go to
Yeah.
college and go, "Oh, yeah, I really wanna look into," like, something must have for me, like, we're fantasy booking, if you like, but that isn't something you don't go to college and just study, you know, this and then that comes out. Like, that's a real niche thing. So I feel like there has to have been something there before. But also, because it comes across quite clearly that, like, Bill Murray's character doesn't really have an interest in what they're doing and is there, as you say, just to kind of chat at the girls and stuff. Like, it would be interesting to see why it is that he continues to kind of tag along with them, because it's evident that they don't have kind of any money as such.
Mm,
Like, they're not going anywhere. They're
yeah.
plugging away at this thing and they're not really getting much back from it. So why does he hang about them? What, like, yeah, they were college friends or whatever, I don't know, but it would be interesting to see that build up how they got it there.
Yeah, I think so too. And of the three of them, Egon is the brain of the group. He's the brainy
Mhm.
one. Aykroyd feels more like an idiot savant than anything else, where he's like, do you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
Where
yeah.
like he's really smart, but you could tell like his house is probably a mess and he doesn't
He's
he doesn't shower that
one of those
much.
things.
And do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like he's
He's
smart, but not to the point of being like a pocket protector kind of smart. Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
he's
So
he's one of those guys that's smart in that he could write you down something smart on paper, but in reality, it falls flat on its ass.
yeah,
Like, he's got the smarts to go, "This is what we need to do," but can't execute it.
right. Yeah,
And
he
that's
can
why him and
direct.
yeah, yeah,
He
yeah,
can
yeah.
direct, but he can't act. Like, he
That's
knows how to get the performance, but he can't do it himself.
yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I get that. That makes sense. Um, Egon has and I don't know if they ever call it the PKE meter, but that's what he's got.
I'm sure they do reference it as that at one point. I'm
Probably
sure they
so.
do.
Yeah. I had to look it up to remember the name of this thing. And, of course, they go to investigate in the library, and they see what they refer to as the full torso apparition. No one calls it a ghost, I don't think.
No, no.
Call it a full torso apparition.
Full torso apparition.
Peter says, "What do we do?" And he pulls them both aside, and Ray says, "One of us should try to speak to it and go to make contact." Peter introduces himself, and says, "Hi, how are you?" That kind of thing, and she
I love
shushes
that
him.
they nominate him, like,
Yes.
he's the wise ass, he's the talker, he's the smooth talker of the group. "Ah, someone should talk to him," and they don't even need to say, "You talk to him," it's just like a look like, "Well, you're the one that's always talking, so you go
Yeah.
and talk to
Yeah.
it."
Just go
And
do it.
yeah, like you say, just turns around and just goes, "Shh," and they're like, "Right,
Yeah.
that hasn't worked." Ray's like, "I've got an idea.
Yeah. And he just runs out and says, "Get her!"
Get
And
her."
they just charge for they don't have a chance because she charges them
Mhm.
and just, freaks out and goes all creep show on them and comes barreling toward them. And it's
That's
like,
it.
yeah. And they go running out.
That's it.
And
Like,
is this where they play The Boys Are Back in Town, or is it I think it's later when they go down the
it's a
fire
little
pole.
later. Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
It's when
right.
they go outside and like Venom like mocks his plan, and he's just like, "Get her." Was that all
Yeah.
you're gonna do? Get her.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, good thinking. Where'd you come up with that at? Yeah, that's great stuff. Um, it's funny because they get readings with this thing, and Egon and I was somehow we went from we just saw our first full torso apparition to, hey, I think we can capture and hold these things.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
that,
whoa, okay, that happened like that.
yeah, and how long have you even been not working on it, but thinking about this kind of stuff
Mhm.
that
Again,
now you
like
know?
some backstory context just to be like, okay, well, we've got this like as a theory, but we haven't yet seen anything to put it into practice. Like, I'd like to see a little bit of that, a little bit of the kind of the science and the thought behind. Oh, okay, they've got this on paper, or have they got it created already? Because again, like we don't even see them creating anything like, the photon packs and the trapper and stuff like that. We don't see like again that would have been really cool.
Yeah.
And it's like they've got these things already, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, poof, here they are. Like it would be cool to see some of that stuff.
Yeah, just sort of them building and designing these things.
Yeah, like even if it was just kind of like a little Rocky style montage, like a 2 minute montage of them, we see like the kind of the blueprints, and I know we get one of those like shots of them with like a welding mask and like and they're just creating
Oh,
bits and pieces and stuff like that.
it's Tony building the Iron Man armor. That's what it
Exactly that,
is.
exactly that.
Yeah. We do get a montage in this film. It is an 80s film, and it's not
We
an
do,
80s film
of
without a
course,
montage.
of course.
So, yeah, we just didn't get involved in that. So they get back to the college, and the trio is informed that they're being moved off campus. Something called the Board of Regents is terminating their grant. They're being thrown off campus. They will no longer fund their work.
Hmm.
The dean is giving them all kinds of crap. Basically, says Peter's a con man. So he
No,
kind
no,
of
no lies detected.
no, he kind of fully defines this guy, and no one gets upset because they're like, "Yeah, it's true."
Yeah, no, we know he is.
Yeah,
But he's our friend. It's like everyone's
yeah,
got one of those friends where you're like, he's a bit of a dick, but he's fine. He's our dick.
yeah,
It's the same with him.
exactly.
Like we know he's a big mouth. Like we know he's a blabbermouth. We know he's a bit of a con man, but he's our friend. It's okay.
And I can't believe we're still talking about wanting a backstory, but now I want to know how they managed to get a grant to do this to begin with.
Yeah. Like, how do you approach a college or a university and go, look, we're studying ghosts. Uh, can we have some money, please? Can
Yeah,
we also have hundreds, thousands of dollars of equipment? And also, can we have like
a lab.
a lab, like
Yeah,
a wing of the university to conduct all this? Oh, and also, can we have some of your students to do some like electric shock treatment?
and and housing. They had housing there, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because they all live in the house later, and you're like, well, we never saw them moving out of apartments.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's again searching for the prequel that we never got. It took us years to get the new movie. We better be glad for what we got, man.
Hmm.
Um, they're having a conversation, and Peter is like, of the three of them, it's shocker here, kids, but Peter's the one that actually sees the bright side of this.
He's just like everything happens for a reason. They've
Yes,
got they're sharing the bottle, doesn't it? Like they're sharing that bottle, him and Ray, and he's just like gives him it, and he's like, I don't know. He's like, I've got an idea. Like everything happens for a reason, blah blah blah. And he's just like, but how are we going to go about it? And he's like, I don't know. Don't
yeah,
know.
and he says Einstein did his best work as a patent clerk,
That's it.
and Ray is worried, but like you said, Peter says believes it happens for a reason. He wants him to go into business for himself. The ecto containment system is going to take a lot of capital to build. Egon says Ray gets a third message, actually, excuse me, a third mortgage on
Mm,
the house that his parents left him.
that's
His
it.
parents left the house he grew up in. The parents left him, and Egon has to have a calculator and tell him that at
Of course he does.
19%, yes,
He's
because
like,
he's
you
the
didn't even try and haggle for it.
no, he's the 3PO of the group. He's got
That's
the
it.
odds and the stats, and no one wants to hear it.
And
He says
Venkman's
that
like, don't worry about it. Like, there's people have got like 3 mortgages on their house. Don't worry, it's fine.
yeah, it's everyone does it. He says at 19%, you'll owe 95,000 in interest for the first 3 years. Don't sign the deal, kids. It's a bad idea.
It's a trap.
Peter calls it indispensable defense science, professional paranormal investigations and eliminations. And that's when they visit
That
the old
really
firehouse.
rolls off the tongue, that one.
I know, right? I had to like pause it and go back and listen to it again because he's talking
It's
so fast, you
it's
know?
it's it's called what now?
Yes. Um, so many things in this movie feel like not just scenery, but part of the story. The firehouse feels like a character in this story, man.
Oh, it does. It does. Like I had the firehouse as a kid as a toy, the actual
Oh,
firehouse model with the car, Slimer, all the figures and everything with like the working like fireman's pole and everything, like opening doors.
wow.
Falls. This thing was big. Like this
I'm
thing was
sure.
really big, man. I remember getting that from it might have been like Toys R Us or something. That was the only present I got that year. That was on my birthday and Christmas present rolled into one. And I was
Wow.
just like, I don't care. That's fine. I'm happy with this. Like, but yeah, the
I
fire
don't know if
station
I
is.
ever, yeah, I don't know if I ever got into Ghostbusters action figures and whatnot. I don't think I ever did.
Oh, I did.
How
I
were,
was
how was the quality of the toys? Was it good?
it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, like fully, like everything was. Every character had like a proton pack. You could take it off. You could put it in their hand. Like
Nice.
all the little bits move. Like, and it was one of those things. Like, I don't know if they make toys in a similar way nowadays. Like, obviously, I haven't had to buy any toys. I haven't got children, so I've not to buy anything. But I remember back then just being like, everything moves. Like all the little nuances, all the little details. Is like the door. There's hinges on the door. They open up, and the fireman's part, and that goes there, and all these little bits, loads of little like kind of fine touches and details, and just remember being absolutely amazed by it. And it's one of those things where I look back and go, oh, I used to have one of those. Where is it? Oh, yeah, it definitely got thrown out. And anytime I'm walking past like a charity shop or something like that, I'm just like, wonder if they've got one of those. I'd like to pick one of those up again. I
Yeah.
had like one of the original like Millennium Falcons, and it was enormous. And then for
Same
whatever
here.
reason, I left it in a garden, like in a house we used to live in, and the grass got overgrown and it just got sucked in by the earth. And now it's at
Oh,
one with Mother Nature and never saw it again. But I don't know what
oh.
happened to my Ghostbusters like fire station, like HQ thing, but it was awesome. I loved it.
I had so many original Star Wars toys. I had original Transformers. I had original G.I. Joe,
Oh man.
original Thundercats, original Mask, and all this stuff. And it's all gone.
Ah.
Nothing's left because I'm an idiot. And
Is that why you've got so many Funkos now? Is it to try and replace some of those? Is that what it is? Is that kind of
man, that's some good old fashioned therapy right there. That's what that is. Could be. It could be. It could be. It's been a replacement session. Yeah, because sometimes I will randomly do searches on eBay. It's like this guy's got Optimus for $50. Oh God! And so I'm tempted, but then I never pull the
Mhm.
trigger. And I'm like, well, if I start again, where am I going to put all of them?
Just it's a slippery slope, man.
Yeah,
It's a downward spiral. Well,
yeah,
for us that collect it, it's an upward spiral. But for those that live with us and that are close to it, it's a downward spiral because it starts to take over the whole house, and like you're
yeah,
just tripping over them like Lego bricks.
yeah, yeah. It's one of those things like the people who love you sit back and go, I think it's time for intervention with this guy. I don't know what's going on. Um, so Kenner put out the toys back in the day,
hmm
and there was
And
a
can I do the
story.
original Star Wars toys as well?
Ah, you're right. Oh,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah.
And then
And
not too long ago, Kenner did a rerun of some of the Star Wars toys, like in the original Kenner packaging.
yeah. And
It's
now those
awesome.
things are worth some money too.
Whew, yeah, they are. They really are.
There's a story from March of 2021 that Hasbro would be re-releasing some classic Kenner toys for the real Ghostbusters.
Mm.
So off to eBay we go, folks.
Why have you told me that?
Ah,
That's it. I'm gonna have to put another shelf up.
there goes the paycheck. Um, yeah, so they visit the firehouse. Egon, and I didn't take notes on specifically what he said, but Egon gives a litany of reasons why this is a terrible
Just
idea.
basically says that the building should be condemned.
It's a death trap.
Do you know
And
what?
then Ray slides down the pole. You got to try
Mhm.
this pole.
Gotta try this. It's amazing. Just wants to move in immediately. I think we should stay here tonight. I'm gonna go get my stuff. You get the estate agent, like the realtor there, just like walks over and she's just like, "Yep, told you so." And Venkman's like, "Yeah, okay, we'll take it."
Yeah.
Do you know? couple of fun facts about that building.
Yes.
So the firehouse that they used as their headquarters was also the mechanic shop in The Mask. Jim Carrey came out in '94, same location.
Oh, nice.
Also, the exterior shots of the station were in New York. The interior, I believe, were in San Francisco.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
I like stories like that.
I love it. Little tidbits,
Yeah.
little snacks of trivia.
And then you want to go visit the site and you get in there and go, this isn't at all like it is in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, it's his own character, man. And the bit with Aykroyd is hilarious. It's one of those memorable lines from the movie. We meet Dana now.
Mm-hmm.
And Dana's got somewhat of a apparition spirit issue going on. We get to meet Lewis for the first time, and he comes out of the hall, out of his apartment, and tells her, "You left your TV on too loud." And then it's very quick when he says it, but if you're not paying attention, you'll miss when he says he climbs out onto the ledge
yeah.
of her apartment, but couldn't disconnect the cable, so he turned his own TV up way too loud,
Just to try and drown out. But
so they would think it's the TVs and
just
not her.
gloss over the fact he tried to do a bit of parkour and scaled the side of the building.
Yes, we just glossed over that and didn't come circle back to it. Like, what's he doing on the ledge of the building? They're pretty far up too.
I love that he comes across like he comes out and he's sort of out of breath and he's like this. He's well into his fitness, or at least in that moment he is, and he's got his kind of gym wear on and stuff. And he's just like, oh, like, I've just been doing this, I've just been doing that, and you come over and do a workout, and I got some like low sodium water or something like that.
Dude, I have
man.
at any given time in my life, I've through the glory of the internet, I've had people around me who were kind of just like Lewis, and the last thing you want to do is be rude. But there's moments when they're talking to you and you're like, I'd like to leave the conversation now.
Yep.
All due respect, but I got to go do stuff. And you don't want to hate on the guy because he's awesome, but at the same time, it's like, oh wow,
It's just like,
I get it.
There's a cutoff point. It's just too much now.
Exactly, yeah, and you don't want to be that guy, but it's like, yeah, it was cutoff point. He locks himself out of the apartment for the first time of how many times in this film?
It's so funny, just the way
great.
he sells it. And he walks
Yeah.
up like he's fully expecting to go through, and then it's just like kind of like half step back, like, oh, what? Hang on, what?
As if he's never done it before.
that happens all the time, every single time.
And then later when he does it, he does the same thing where he runs into the door as if he expects it to open. As if it's never happened.
Oh man, it's so good.
We get the Ghostbusters commercial after this, and it's on YouTube, a self-contained Ghostbusters ad, which you could take, totally steal, put on your podcast, and get sued, and they'll pull it down. But it'd be a great little sponsorship for you. And it's the actual commercial, and it's so good. And of course, the best bit is, "We're ready to believe you."
We're ready to believe you.
Oh.
Do you know something interesting about that little advert?
Yeah.
So during the film's initial release, in order to keep interest going, the director Ivan Reitman ran a trailer that was basically that same commercial that they used in the movie, and the number that was, I think, something 555 was replaced with a 1-800 number, and it actually allowed people to call in. And when they called in, it was an answer phone message of Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd, and it was something to the effect of like, "Oh, hi, we're out catching ghosts right now."
That's awesome.
And they got a ridiculous number of calls. I think it was where is it? I jotted it down somewhere. 1,000 calls per hour, 24 hours a day for 6 weeks.
Holy God.
Yeah.
But
that's
in the
like
80s,
a really clever little thing. Yeah, in the 80s.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, that's huge, man. But that's pretty cool. Like they had this little, as you said, this little self-contained thing there, but using that almost as like a further bit of marketing, even when the film was out, just to kind of like a little boost, like, oh, we'll just put that out and use that as an extra marketing tool for the film. It was really, really clever.
Yeah. And I like that you said the word marketing. We're not giving this film enough props on the marketing side of it, because for months we didn't have the benefit of the internet then. We didn't have the benefit of sneak previews and trailers and all the teasers and stuff, giving away stories and Rotten Tomatoes. All we had were posters.
Yeah.
And for months in the theater, there was a poster of the Ghostbusters logo, and it would say, coming to save the world this summer.
It's just the ghost with like the no go symbol, like the cross
Yeah.
for it, and it's just like, what's this?
And
What
it's
is that?
like, this movie should get all the awards for doing nothing
Hmm.
else but branding.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
wow.
it's iconic. Just that image of the
Yes.
ghost and the stop sign. You could put that anywhere, and people straight away Ghostbusters. You don't even need to tell them.
Right.
The fact that that was all they used as their sole marketing thing, and the amount of hype that it built up. And
Yeah.
now what, like 35, 36, 7, whatever years on, anyone who's anyone knows that just that symbol is Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Superb.
It still
Superb.
works. It still
Yeah.
works. Uh, you mentioned Ivan Reitman. I'm glad you did. I don't know if I have a short list in my head of what if this guy directed this film.
Mm.
I don't want to play that game because I think Ivan Reitman did fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
you're tasked with, hi, you have to direct Bill Murray. Good
Good luck with
luck.
that.
Yeah. And he did as good as anybody could have. I think he did great. And it's funny how his son Jason is directing Afterlife, which is coming
Mm.
up soon. So
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Really,
great
really
stuff,
cool.
man.
Yeah.
We see Dana in her apartment, and during my other rewatch, which is right now, actually, I'm getting to that part right now, and the great moment where the eggs start leaping out of the carton and
Hmm.
frying on the countertop, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. 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 Do
And
you know? Sorry, go on, go on.
I was going to say when she opens the fridge, we see the not so believable CGI benefit.
Into the hell gate or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Do you know one thing I didn't notice until I watched this back now? And this happens all the time with films I watch. I watch them back when I'm older and go, oh, I never noticed that before. Oh, I never picked up on that before. So when we see the eggs cracking and frying on the countertop, I
Mhm.
never realized that the little bag next to it is a big bag of Stay Puffed marshmallows
Yep.
until it I was today years old when I realized that, as the kids say.
Right.
But yeah,
I
just
did.
little
I did
stuff like
actually
that.
pick up on that. Yeah.
Yeah, little
A little
bits and
bit of
pieces like that.
foreshadowing for what's to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
That's subtle.
I know we're in two separate countries here, but tell me you didn't think that for years as a kid that it was an actual brand of marshmallows, because I did.
Oh, I fully believed it was.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
fully believed it
Because
was. I'd have my mum
even
go out and looking for them.
oh, did you really? That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's like, "I've got these ones." "No, they're not the same."
Yeah. In my head, because I'm not in New York, even though I'm in the States, in my head, I thought, well, that's a New York thing. That must
Mm,
be it's up north, and of course it's real. I had no
yeah, yeah.
idea Aykroyd created the thing, and it's
Outstanding.
great. Yeah. Talk about brand. How come it's not a brand at this
I was
point, like
gonna
an actual
say,
brand?
surely now for the cinematic release of Afterlife, they've got to do those. They've got to do
Oh,
those out of
man.
theaters, like CM Punk did with the ice
Oh,
cream. Like,
perfect.
can we have you can have popcorn, nachos, or some Stay Puft Marshmallows?
Oh, I'll take them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Supposedly it's a combination of the Pillsbury Doughboy and the Michelin Man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, 100%.
And again, we see Zool for the first time, and it's not exactly a great CG rendition, but it's the 80s. It's real world effects. Didn't Rick Baker do the creature effects in this movie? I'm
I
wanting to
believe
say.
so. I believe
Yeah.
so, yeah.
The
Yeah.
great, the great and
Great
powerful Rick
Rick
Baker.
Baker. The
Oh,
great, powerful, yeah.
we bow at the feet of the master. Like I'm sure some of the CG nerds are like, "Oh my god, I want to do Rick Baker effect here. This will be fun."
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
um, we do meet Janine as all this is going on, and Peter comes in. There's nothing for her to do, and he says, type something, will you? We're paying you. And
Just
then
before that, we
yeah,
get the exterior shot of the building, and they're just putting up the sign on the front, aren't they? This really sort of crudely painted sign that just says Ghostbusters, and we
yes,
get Ray approaching in what turns out to be Ecto One, the car, and it's
very true.
this old banger, and I don't know if that's a British term, an old banger. An old banger is just like just a beaten up car, basically, like an old banger. Um, and he sort of pulls up in it, and I think it's Venkman on the outside. He's like, "Oh, so you know what's with the car?" And he's like, "Oh, I got it for a real bargain.
Yeah,
I got it for like I think he says like 4,900 or something like
yeah,
that."
4,800. Yeah,
And he's like, "Oh, like is it okay? And he's like, oh well, it's got this and that needs fixing and that needs changing and that needs replacing. Apart from that, yeah, it's really really good.
When he tells him 4,800, Peter makes this face like he's about to pass out, and I'm like, oh my
Yeah,
god,
yeah. I love that Peter makes that face as if to be like, oh, how can you spend like can't
yeah.
believe you spent that much on it? It's not even his money. It's
No,
it's
it's not.
raised like mortgaged house from his parents. What does it matter to him how much he spent?
That's a really good call, actually. And banger is a British term. So for us, it would be like a junker.
A junker. Oh, okay. Yeah,
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 it's a
yeah.
junker. It's it's an old school ambulance,
Mm,
which comes to be known as Ecto One, which is like the
mhm.
perfect name for the car.
Oh yeah. I also had one of those as well.
Did you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That
Did the
was cool.
back was it the back slide like flip
Back
open and
slide out. Yeah.
yeah? Oh,
Like
that's
the
cool.
boot opened up the hood, not the
Yeah.
hood. Yeah, the boot that opened up, and you had the thing that slid out, and that was so good. The lights on the top as well, the little button to activate the lights.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Um, I've been to Heroes Con in Charlotte. We went every year for pushing 20 years till COVID happened.
Mm,
And almost every year without fail, we've had Ghostbusters cosplaying walking around. Um,
awesome.
and Ecto One has been there. I don't know how many years in a row now, or an Ecto One has been there. And Ghostbusters it's so much fun. You always got to get pictures with those guys. It doesn't matter who they are, but if they're really committed to what they're doing, they got the great looking coveralls, the realistic proton packs. You can turn them on. They have the sound effects, which is
Oh
awesome.
man, I'd
Oh,
love to do that. I'd love to do that. If I'm like, I don't really go to con events that much, or I do, but I don't tend to dress up. But
mhm.
rewatching Ghostbusters yesterday, I was just like, how have I not gone to a con event as a
Oh,
Ghostbuster? And I was like, if I'm gonna go, because obviously it's Halloween coming up, and I've got a lot of friends that are dressing up as this, that, and the other. And my workmate James, he's going as Wolverine, and he's made these really crude claws out of basic sort of tin foil, like Bako foil, and like toilet roll tubes and this, that, and the other. And he's just like, yeah, I'm doing it on a budget. And I'm just like, do you know what? The next con I go to, I'm going as a Ghostbuster. And I remember pausing it in one of the scenes when we see it a little later on with the full getup and just thinking, right, what can I do? How can I get that? How can I make that? And I'm like, if I'm going to do like one of the full on like proton packs and stuff, I was like, I want that to be working. I want people to be able to look at that and go, where's he got that?
yeah.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you, more than likely, you can actually buy one
Mm.
working without putting. And all you have to do is invest. And there's probably websites that can tell you if you want to do this. Here's the coveralls you buy. Here's the brand. Here's
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
color.
yeah.
Here's what the color's called. Here's the boots. Here's the elbow pads, the knee pads. Because some of these cosplayers they do their homework, man,
Oh yeah, yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Well, it's for a lot of people, it's like it's a lifestyle, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
you get people that go to these things, and that's what they do, and they'll do kind of like almost a circuit of these Comic Con events, and they'll get paid to do them a lot of the time because they invest the time into their outfit to the point
sure.
where it's just like you get hundreds, thousands of people over a weekend come
Oh
to do
man.
photos. People make a living off it, so yeah,
We would there would be a guy that came several years in a row as Captain Jack Sparrow,
nice,
and he was so close to Depp, and the voice, it
really.
was scary. Like, of course, it's not Depp, but you're doing like you're squinting and you're going, "Holy
You
God,
go,
is that him?"
is it?" Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
he's like sashaying through the con, walking how he walks,
Yeah,
and you'll
yeah.
stop and say, "Dude, can I get a picture?" He goes, "Of course you can. Come here."
I've got come
Oh,
here,
it's
boy.
great. So good. And,
Amazing.
I've got pictures of him with my kid because we would dress my kid up every year, when he started going with us to the convention. So,
Mm.
yeah, it was pretty cool. Um, Round about this time, Dana visits the Ghostbusters, and Peter is all kinds of happy. One, because she's hot. Two, because they have a client for the first time ever.
Yeah. I love the way that he absolutely leaps over the
Yeah.
desk. So we get the introduction to Janine. We get I think Egon's like under the desk, like trying to fix something, and she's like,
Yes.
"Oh, I like to read books and blah blah blah." He's like, "What do you like to do?" And he's like, "My hobby is collecting spores, molds, and fungus."
You're right.
And then Dana walks in, and she's like, "Oh, I'm looking for the Ghostbusters. Is this the right place?"
Yeah.
Like, before anything else is said. You just see Fakeman just like eye contact, beeline, sprint, hurdle over the outside of the desk bit, and just
Yeah.
like straight up in her face.
And what's funny is not that, and as a young impressionable kid, what I saw was a dude under a desk
Yeah,
and the girl sitting there. And in my head, for
yeah.
years, I thought he was up to no good under there. I
My
legit
girlfriend said
thought,
exactly the same thing because my girlfriend
wow.
hadn't seen Ghostbusters the whole way through, and so I was sat watching it last night, and she was just like, "Was he?" And I was like, "No, no, he
Yeah,
wasn't."
yeah, yeah.
And she was like, I mean, it definitely looks like it." I'm like, "Yeah, no, no, I know it," and that's exactly what I thought when I was younger, but it's fine. He's not.
Yeah. Because at the time, I guess in my head, I justified it by saying, I'm a kid. This is a movie for adults. I'll just get over it. I won't think about it because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
think I just excused it. But
You just
like,
gloss over that sort of thing.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
because there's not like an exorbitant amount of language. There's no real. I mean, we actually get Sigourney Weaver's chest being exposed very very quickly in the chair,
Hmm.
which it's at the time upon first viewing I miss it, but
Yeah.
over the years the internet likes to show you nudity, and
Hmm.
so I'm like, oh, it popped out. I didn't know, and like. And so she's sexy in the end, but there's no real overt stuff. There's the apparition floating over Aykroyd in the firehouse. We've
Hmm.
not gotten there yet. So yeah, there's some innuendo, but it's not.
It's subtle. It's subtle.
Yeah, it's somewhat
Well,
subtle,
I
but
say subtle. It's
yeah,
not subtle, but it doesn't reveal enough for it to be kind of all out in your face, but it's enough
right.
to go, "Oh, yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah, like it'll
Hmm.
be all right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's fine."
Uh, she comes in and basically is trying to give him the lowdown, and so he goes back to her apartment with her, and he's acting like the expert. Let me go in before you, and all this stuff, and like you could tell he probably thinks she's a quack, and he
Mm.
doesn't care because she's pretty.
Well, I know
Uh,
that bit before when they've got the kind of the what's it called? Like the things on her head and they're analyzing her and stuff like that.
yes,
And none of them quite believe it's real, do they? It's almost like well, it could just be a flashback of this, or it could be that sort of thing.
right.
And none of them really get it. But then they suggest, okay, well, okay, maybe we should go and look into it. Maybe we can look at like the architecture of the building. Maybe we could go and do this. We'll look into it. And
Yeah,
so Venkman's the one that just says, I'll go and have a look. But initially he says, "Yeah, don't worry, leave me. I'll go and check her out. I
yeah,
mean, I'll go and check it out." You just
yeah,
see her face look up at him as like, "What did you say?" And he's like, "No, that's not what I said. No, 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 it's fine. I'll go and check it out. It's fine."
yeah. She gets the clue very early on that he's going to hit on her, that he's
Hmm.
interested in her already. It's funny because this is their business and this is what they've been wanting to do for a long time, but they're automatically being cynics toward
Yeah,
her.
yeah, yeah. Like their
Like,
first customer, you're just like, okay, you think you jump on it, and they're just like, no, no, it's not real. Oh, it could be this, could be that. And that was like really, again, something I didn't pick up on before, and I was just like, why are they all of a sudden really cynical? This is what they've been building up to.
yeah.
This is their whole life. This is, the reason they're doing it. And the first person that they get in, they're just like, no,
And
no.
it's funny because the whole they're scientists first,
Mm,
and then I guess adventurers second. So as a scientist, the first thing you try to do is debunk what you're seeing. And if
hmm
you can't debunk it, then what you're left with is the truth, as they say. So
hmm
yeah, yeah, that's interesting.
yeah.
They go to her apartment and Peter hits keys on the piano and he's just totally messing with it.
He's
He's
like,
like,
digga, 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 digga. They hate
"Yeah, I hate this.
that.
Drives him crazy."
He just comes in and just acts like Billy Big Balls. Like,
Yes,
yeah, I've got this. It's fine. I've done this before.
she
He's got
says you.
this.
She
Go on.
says you don't act like a scientist, more like a game show host.
That's it. He's got that weird kind of like it looks like a kind of like a tube, like a wand, and it's just got a pump in it. And he's like, and she's like, "What's that?" And he's like, "It's technical,"
Yeah.
because he definitely doesn't know what it is either.
No, it's like he picked up some tech on a table in the office and just took it with him.
This will make me look smart.
Yeah,
I don't know what it does, but I'll just take this.
yeah. He has no
There's
idea what it is.
there's a really funny line in this scene where he's walking around, he's going to the various rooms, and he goes into the bedroom. She's like, "Oh, that's a bedroom. Nothing happened in there." And he goes, "What a crime."
Yeah.
Again,
It,
something else I absolutely didn't pick up on when I watched this when I was younger.
yeah, it's a lot of stuff gets hazy on you over the years, man.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you go back and revisit a movie pretty often, and I haven't revisited this movie in a long time.
Same.
Uh, yeah, it's obvious that he's hitting on her. He even goes as far as to say is, "I'm gonna go for broke. I'm madly in love with you." And
Yeah,
she's like,
yeah, yeah.
"What?" She says,
That's it.
"You're so odd." Like he goes for the throat within 2 minutes of knowing this girl,
Hmm.
which is crazy. Lewis comes out of his apartment and gets locked out again.
Hmm.
And does he make any kind of contact with Venkman at all? Don't they speak to each other? Seems
uh,
like he says something to him.
I can't remember actually. I don't think he. I think he just brushes them off. I don't think if they do, I don't think he says anything. I don't think there's any interaction until a little later with them.
Yeah. And Lewis will play a pivotal role in this film
Mm.
later. Foreshadowing. So they're having takeout back at the house, and of course, he wants to take her out to dinner. He's like, "I'm gonna need some of the petty cash to take her out to dinner," and Ray says, "You are looking at what's left of the petty cash. This meal right here." And Janine answers the phone, and you don't need to hear the voice on the other end, but the way she does it is great. She goes, "Hello, Ghostbusters," and she's like, "Yes, of course, they're serious."
That's it.
Like, it's great stuff. And she's like, yes, well, they'll be discreet." And she hits the alarm, and she's like, what does she
We've
say? "We've
got
got one."
one.
Yeah. And then the
I love
song plays, and it's chaos.
do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. I love that she's like, yeah, of course they'll be discreet. And then the next scene is absolute chaos.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
see them coming down the fire pole and like Ray's loving coming down the fire pole. Egon
Oh
comes
yeah.
down and looks absolutely terrified. He's just like clutching onto this pole and his face is hilarious. But they rock
They
up to like the hotel, don't they? Is it the Cedric Hotel? And they've got
Cedric
the
Hotel.
sirens on and everything, and they're loud as hell. And I'm just like, yeah, yeah, totally discreet.
Is that a real place, the Cedric Hotel?
I have no idea.
I don't know either.
I mean, I'll have a look. Cedric
Um,
Hotel, New
I'd like
York.
to think it is, but I'll bet it's not.
Uh, it is.
Wow. Cool.
Oh no, hang on. No, it's not. No,
Oh.
it's not. Cedric Hotel is fictitious. The scene was actually shot in Los Angeles at the Millennium
Oh.
Biltmore Hotel.
Man, that ruins it for me. I like to think the
Ah,
whole thing's in New York, dude.
yeah.
But
I mean,
isn't
it
it like
makes
more isn't it like more expensive to film in New York? Isn't that one because you get like the taxes and
yeah,
everything that's involved with
yeah,
it?
yeah. That's why, like, see, like, loads of films, like when loads of stuff's filmed in like Australia. Like
Hmm.
loads of the Marvel stuff is filmed in, I think, Australia,
Yeah,
because
New
I imagine
Zealand
it must
too as
be New
well.
Zealand. That's it, yeah, because I imagine it's cheaper to film over there, and like Canada as well.
Hmm.
Like I think it's cheaper to film in Canada than it is in most parts of the states. Like I've been watching Lock and Key. The second series of that on Netflix came out, which is really good, based on a
Nice.
graphic novel.
Yes.
But it's set in Boston, but it's actually filmed in Nova Scotia,
Cool.
in Lunenburg. And I only know that specifically because I have a friend that moved over to Lunenburg.
Uh-huh.
But it's really funny because I recognized it before I knew it was filmed there, watching it and just being like, that looks like where my friend Chris lives, because they've got these
Wow.
like old kind of like, well, not even that old, but they're kind of like wooden houses, like wooden fronted houses that are painted these really bright, vibrant colors. I'm like, there's only one place I know in the world that does that, and that's Lunenburg in Nova
Right.
Scotia. And I saw that and was just like, yeah, yeah, it was definitely Lunenburg. And but there's stickers and stuff all over the windows in each scene, just being like, oh yeah, America and stuff. I'm like, that's not America, it's Canada. So it must be one of those things where New York's really expensive to film in, I guess. So they have exterior shots in New York, so it's synonymous with that. But anything internally, I suppose if they're having to film multiple scenes in there over a number of weeks, it's cheaper to just hop over to wherever else.
And I think they get breaks in certain countries, I think, for filming.
Mm,
I believe. I think is how the story goes. That for certain countries give like somehow they'll get breaks for because they're bringing money into the local economy because it's putting people to work,
of course.
you
Yeah, yeah,
know.
yeah.
And plus it's local hotels, restaurants, I mean, you'd have to think that all that stuff picks up as well when the movie comes to town.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You like a crew of hundreds of people sort of thing. Like they're not there just for a day, they're there for a few weeks. So anything locally where they're filming's gonna benefit from it. So
Right, right.
for like catering companies and stuff like that, you got a team of 200 people that need
Catering, yeah.
feeding and watering sort of thing. So yeah, it's got to boost the economy for a bit and stuff like this. So like where the fire station is in New York, like the amount of people that go there to have a photo outside that iconic building. And imagine having like an eatery, a restaurant, a takeaway situated on that street where it is. The amount of business that you'd make off it, you're like, well, I know there's going to be thousands of people on a photo outside there every day.
Right.
So anyone benefits from it. You're just like, "Oh, okay, well, they did an exterior shot here. Sweet. I'll just set up
Yeah.
business."
And you would think with especially with it being in LA, that would be on one of the tours that you could get of that city too.
100%. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, one of the coolest moments of this movie for me is when they really come together in jail as a team. And when I say jail, I mean they figure out how to do this for real. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that's the Sedgwick Hotel because they go to they got to get up there somehow. They're not, Captain Marvel or anything. So they got to take the elevator. And you got the old
It's
guy.
so good.
And doesn't the old guy have a cigar in his hand? I
He's just
think.
stood there with a cigar, but back when you could smoke inside
Yeah.
buildings.
Yeah. It
Stood
was a
there in like his overcoat and his trilby hat and his cigar, and he's just like, "What are you meant to be? Some sort of cosmonaut?"
yeah, yeah.
Venkman's like, someone saw a cockroach on like the 12th floor, and the guy's like, "That's got to be some cockroach." He
It's like,
turns around and goes, "Yeah, bite your head off,
bite your
man."
head off. Yeah. It's great because they're in the elevator and there's this great moment, and I swear Harold Ramis is going to crack up. He's
Hmm.
just you can tell. Like I'm thinking, how
Yeah.
many takes?
How many takes did that little bit take?
Yeah, because he's almost like grinning, but
Hmm.
like he's trying to hold it down. And
Stifling it.
yeah, and it occurs to them. He's like, we haven't tested the equipment. It's like I'm thinking, you haven't tested the equipment. What?
I love that he just drops in like, "Oh, you've just got a nuclear accelerator on your back, but we've not tested it."
Peter says each one of us is wearing an unlicensed nuclear accelerator on his back. Ray says, switch me on, and they do, and then freaking Egon and Peter both try to get away from the elevator. Oh, it's so good. Because the
Oh
thing just
man.
comes to life and Ray's fine. He's focused.
Yeah, he's in the zone.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Tom Clark 6M Podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M Podcast sent you.
They get up to the floor, and of course, they hit the poor maid's cart with the weapons, and it's
I love
like,
that straight away. Like, we haven't
yeah.
tested these. Oh, hang on. There's just an innocent bystander member of the public that's just fired this nuclear blaster.
I mean, what happens if you hit a human with this thing? Are they dead on impact, like a lightsaber, or what happens?
I imagine it's like in Loki where they just get pruned and they just go.
Oh, they turn to cinders. Oh
That's it.
man. Woo. And he said, successful test. Like, well, they tested the weapons now. They work. So,
I love the woman, like, he fires it and he's just like, "Sorry, I thought you were someone else."
yeah, yeah,
Like, what the hell are you doing?
yeah, yeah. And I think it's Ray that says, I think we better split up. And Peter goes, yeah, we can do more damage that way.
Yeah.
It's great. We get our first view of Slimer.
Mhm.
Slimer wasn't as much of a major character in the two movies as he was in the animated series, where he became a mainstay part of the
Prominent.
cast.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
Slimer's one of those, like, yes, through the animated stuff was a prominent member, but in the films really wasn't. But it's hilarious that you think Ghostbusters and straight away people go, "Slimer,
Yeah.
Ghostbusters," and you're just like, Slimer barely featured in like either film,
Yeah.
but it's just the go-to. Like it's one of those like what game show is it? Is it Family Fortunes? Where it's like the top 10, like our survey says,
Oh,
and they
Family
go,
Feud. Over here, it's
Family
Family
Feud.
Feud.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
Family Fortunes over here, but the same
Ah,
thing where that you just go, oh, okay. We asked members of the public like top 10 things they associate with Ghostbusters, the film, I guarantee Slimer's probably number 1 or 2.
Yeah, yeah,
And yet features very, very little in the movie.
yeah. And now I want to do it. Now I want to play it because number 1 is Slimer. Number two is Ghosts, unless that would be the same answer. The car, the proton packs, the coveralls, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Yeah.
There you go. Game over. I win.
That's it.
We sweat.
Something interesting about Slimer. So on set, Dan Aykroyd referred to Slimer as the ghost of John Belushi. And it was in part due to like Slimer's gluttonous eating. And apparently it was based on Belushi's cafeteria scene in National Lampoon's Animal House. Wow. So that's why he referred to it. So that's a nice touch.
Yeah.
Being that, as I said at the top of this, like he was originally wanted in there until he passed away kind of halfway through writing. So yeah, it's a nice little nod. I like stuff like that.
I mean, he was up for Venkman, right? Belushi was it written for him? Venkman was?
I believe so. Yeah. Where am I? Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I could see him doing Venkman. I still see Michael Keaton, but it's
yeah.
Oof. I mean, then you got the Blues Brothers back together as Ghostbusters, which is different.
Oh, Blues Brothers is another one if you haven't already done it.
Oh, it's gonna happen.
Oh boy,
I love that film.
That's another one in the top 10. I'll tell you now.
We're on the plane, or we're in an Uber. I think we're on the plane. I can't remember. Maybe it was in the backseat of an Uber. I look at my buddy and my kid, and I said, "It's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a packet of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses." And nobody hit me with hit it. Nobody hit me, and I'm like, "You're letting me down. Come on, we're here." Yeah. So yeah, we're getting our universes mixed up, but it's yeah. Yeah, we get Slimer, the mascot of the Ghostbusters films, the animated series, the comics. And if I'm not mistaken, the publisher was Now Comics, who I don't know how they managed to do it, but Now Comics got their hands on a lot of movie licenses back in the day.
Okay.
They did Ghostbusters. I want to say, I think Now had Racer X. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I've got a bunch of those in long boxes somewhere. And Now Comics had another lot, had 2 or 3 licenses back in the day.
Green Hornet.
Yep. I do have some old Green Hornet from Now Comics. It was a good little imprint.
Mr. T and the T-Force.
Oh, I don't have any Mr. T and the T-Force, but what an icon that guy is.
Speed Racer.
No, I don't have any Speed Racer. I was really into Racer X though.
Terminator, Twilight Zone.
That's right. They had
Universal
Terminator.
Soldier.
Yep. I have some of the old Terminators from them. So
nice.
Because they now had it before Dark Horse had it.
Okay.
Had the license for Terminator. So well, anyway, we see them go after Slimer. Ray tries to kill it, destroys the hallway. Egon is using the PK meter to scan. And Peter's at the end of the hall. He sees Slimer from a distance. It's looking at him, and he's on the walkie saying, "It's looking at me, Ray.
It's looking at me."
Yeah. And this I remember being in the trailer as well as we got closer to the release of the film.
Yep.
Just the bit where he looks up and says, "He slimed me." And just that moment is in the trailer or in the previews for the movie, and I'm like, that's a classic line right there.
Yeah, I love the build up to that where he's just like, "It's looking at me." Ray says something on the radio, and he's just like, "He can hear you," and he's like, "Don't move, it won't hurt you." And then the next thing is just him on the floor, slimed it, running towards it.
And he's like, and you're telling Bill Murray, "We're gonna pull the camera towards you. Just hold the walkie and scream." And he went along with it, which is surprising in and of itself. But it was a great take, and he's like this, and it's coming so right
good.
at him.
So good.
And he says he's slimy, and Ray says, "That's great, actual physical contact."
That's it.
Like he couldn't be happier. They go to the ballroom, which is a great scene. They literally destroy this place, and then we get a great little tidbit of info from Egon. Took him the whole movie to get here, where he says, "I forgot to mention something very important. Don't cross the streams." He says, "Why?" He says, "It would be bad."
It would be bad.
What?
That's it.
He's like, "Try to imagine all life as you know it, stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light."
He's like,
You'd think that'd be something he mentioned maybe in the elevator on the way
yeah,
up.
yeah. When they turn the unit on, the
When they
backpack
turn
on.
it on, rather than, okay, we've got in here, we've seen a ghost, and now we need to take it down, and we're all stood next to each other with these things on. Now I'll tell you, oh yeah, don't cross them because shiz will get real.
Yeah, and because Peter wraps it up by saying, important safety tip. Thanks, Egon. Like
Mhm.
it's off
Yeah,
the
yeah.
cuff. Yeah.
This is the first time in the film that, so obviously we see, the proton packs go off at that first instance when they step out of the lift and they hit the maid. But this is the first time we see them kind of as a group, as a trio, collectively use them. Um, and I've got a note here about the proton packs. And did a bit of research about how they came about. And originally they were designed to be like wands, and they were meant to be a
Mm.
really long stick with a ball on the end. And they were meant to be used almost like a wand, where they'd sort of flick their wrist and then they would point them at the ghost.
Wow.
But they were changed to laser guns to fit the idea more so of Ghostbusters creating their gear from more practical equipment rather than kind of sci-fi wizardry stuff.
Plus, this is dudes in science fiction. You got to have a gun to blow stuff up. I
Of
mean,
course, of course.
how do you not have a gun and to blow stuff up? I mean, Star Wars is great with your light swords and whatnot, Jedi magic, but you need blasters too, man.
Of
Come on,
course.
you know,
Like big boomstick.
boomstick. Yes, don't anger the boomstick. Yeah, that's crazy. I can't imagine it being anything other than the guns. I just can't.
No, no.
Oh man, yeah, I can't
Again,
even.
that would be something cool to see in some sort of prequel thing where you see the development of these and you see the iterations it goes through until they get to
Yes,
that.
and as much as I want to see it, I gotta imagine it'd be pretty boring unless it's just
A
they.
montage. Just
Yeah, montage. I'm thinking like a more of an X-Files situation where it's like, did that really happen or did he imagine it? Is it,
yeah.
Yeah. They just, I mean, dude, they demolished this ballroom. Like, and to your point about the guns, it took 45 minutes for them to get to the guns in this film.
Hmm.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took them a while, but they destroyed this ballroom. And for the first time, we get what these things are called because I don't think we got to that point. Peter
Mm.
calls it a positron collider.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what he calls the weapons. I didn't know that. They open the trap. They trap Slimer. Ray says, well, that wasn't such a chore now, was it? And everything's on fire,
Total chaos and destruction. Yeah, it was
Yes.
fine. It was a doddle.
Oh, man. They came out, and of course, Peter said, we came, we saw, we
We
kicked its
kicked its
ass.
ass.
Oh,
I love that the hotel guy comes up to them and he's just like they're kind of like dabbling over price and stuff like that, and Venkman like sort of totaling up the bill. And he's like, "Oh, there's absolutely no way we can pay that." And he's like, "Fine, we'll just release this thing back in there." Then he's like, "No,
yeah.
no, 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 it's okay, I'll pay it."
Like, it's all right. We can just put it right back. Ray's like, all right. And Ray's just going to go back in there and release it,
Yeah.
Oh,
Just like dropping a bass just back in the pond, back in the water.
Peter tells him it's a class 5 full roaming vapor, 4,000 for entrapment. And I don't know what Egon says to him, but it's under his breath. Like, you got to charge him. Yeah. I don't know what he says, but you can tell he's talking like, go up,
He's
go
like,
up.
no, 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 go up. Add this, add this, add this,
Yeah.
add
Yeah.
that.
4,000 for entrapment, 1,000 for storage. Yeah. Make that movie today. And it's like 15,000
And
and
the rest.
5,000. Yeah.
Yeah, and the rest.
Yeah. No kidding. Jeez. And it's funny because, and I've rewatched the film. Do we get an explanation of why suddenly out of the blue everything starts happening? Was there?
Yeah, no, there wasn't an explanation, but we get like a series of like TV adverts and news reports of kind of
Yeah.
like ghost sightings across the city, and it's almost like this one in the hotel triggered everything. But
Yeah.
there's never a real explanation given. But all of a sudden, it's just like Ghostbusters are just like the breaking headline news across every channel, every report, and this is kicking off here, and this is happening there, and we get like a kind of this is the little kind of montage bit that we get of them kind of like bounding across the city and taking this out from here and that out from there. And there's a really funny scene where they've just kind of captured a ghost, and there's this little Asian shopkeeper that comes over and is trying to give them these kind of chickens that he's just
Yeah.
got from the front of his shop.
Trying to pay them with chickens, I guess.
That's
Or
it.
oh, that's good stuff. Yeah, don't they get close in part two? Doesn't the story get out in part two that they're suggesting that maybe the Ghostbusters made all this up? It's all been phony this whole time, and it's been.
Yeah,
Am
well,
I?
they mention it. They mention it in this one.
Ah,
It's when we'll get to it in a bit, but it's when Peck comes in and just
yep,
basically says that he believes they've been using kind of like hallucinogens and stuff like that to convince people that there's ghosts, and they're profiting off the fact that they've done that.
right. I
But
know he
they
had
may
that
also
theory.
mention it in the
Yeah,
second one. I can't remember. They may do.
that's what I was saying. I know he had that theory, but it seemed to me that they're doing like the man on the street interview where someone's like, "Yeah, it's they're lied to us or something." I'm thinking maybe I'm getting it mixed with a Marvel film or something. I don't know, but from an outsider's perspective, if you lived in New York, you could almost think this whole thing's a sham. This is
It's baloney.
funny how they show up, and within a month of them showing up, there's ghosts
Yeah,
everywhere. Come on.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
created this to begin with. Maybe they're supernatural by themselves.
Maybe they're the maybe they're the ghosts.
They're the magnets.
That's it.
We're gonna rewrite this sucker before it's over with. We'll make a better movie. It's cool because it's 80s montage time, kids.
Oh yeah.
We see Larry King. They make the cover of Time Magazine, USA Today, Omni, which little known fact, it's not a known fact at all because I never disclosed it in public because no one cares. But as a young man, I had a subscription to Omni only because the covers were awesome. And I had no idea what was happening inside the magazine because they weren't like magazines for fans. They were magazines for really, really smart people.
Right.
And I had subscription, which I just collected the magazines, but I would occasionally read the random time travel essay or the random,
Mhm.
what if we go to Jupiter story? And it's
Oh
like that
man,
stuff I would get into it, but
we didn't get Omni over here, so I've just Googled it and had a look.
really
Those front covers,
awesome.
that just
Yeah.
worth collecting just for the front cover. Like it
Yes.
reminds me of like a lot of like because I used to for a bit I had a National Geographic subscription,
Nice.
and the front cover would always be this incredible striking picture.
Oh
But
yeah.
these Omni ones are just like something out of a sci-fi movie, it's just like old like 80s computer games, like front covers, like old like Atari game covers. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So you had a subscription to Omni.
I did. I had
Amazing.
stacks of those books, and I know they all got thrown away over the years, but man, I was really into it. And again, it was written for people way, way smarter than me, but I was still into it. And yeah, it was again, it was just something I did. So when I saw the Omni magazine cover, I'm like, oh my God, that brings back memories.
Saying that, I say we didn't get that in the UK. Looking it up, apparently we did get it in the UK, but it was discontinued in '95.
Ah,
So like I would
interesting.
have only been 10. So,
Wow.
but it ran from 78 until 95. That's pretty cool. Science and Science Fiction magazine, published in the US and the UK, contained articles on science, paraphysiology, and short works of science fiction.
Yeah.
Man, that sounds cool. I like that.
Yeah, it was.
Apparently, you can get the entire run of the magazine for free online to read.
Oh, I'm doing that now. That's happening. Are you kidding me? Yeah, dude, I'll do that. Like I got time in my day to go do that, but I'm going to look it up anyway. Uh, well, another cool part about this montage is we get Casey Kasem, who, dude, I grew up listening. Did you get Casey Kasem over there?
We might have done, but I might not have been old enough to
Hmm.
remember.
I used to listen to America's Top 40 all the time. And he was the guy counting down the hits, man. Like before, I think this is 84. MTV launched in 84, I think. Pretty sure.
That sounds about right.
Because I know Van Halen had Jump, which was off the album 1984. So I feel like 84 is when they launched. Could be 83.
Oh, no, 81.
Nice. I didn't
MTV,
realize it
an
was
American
early.
channel that launched on August the 1st, 1981, based in New York.
Wow. Well, there you
Yeah.
go. But yeah, Casey counted down the top 40, which was cool. So it was nice seeing his or hearing his voice again.
Oh, okay.
when they get interviewed in this one little tidbit, and the guy says, "I think everyone wants to know how is Elvis, and have you seen him lately?" If you're gonna ask a Ghostbuster question, that's not a bad question.
There's worse questions to ask, definitely.
Of course. We get the little dream of the spirit floating above Ray, and it's I didn't remember this as a kid, but it was a dream. Like it
Mm.
shows them asleep, and then you get the wavy, like the Wayne's World doodle doodle thing
Diddly, diddly,
happening.
diddly.
Yeah. And then it becomes, oh, Ray's dreaming this. But at the time
Mm.
as a kid,
It
I
wasn't
didn't
that
pick up on
obvious.
that.
No,
No.
it definitely wasn't that obvious.
So it kind of begs the question, why not just let it be real instead of it being a dream? Like if ghosts are running rampant anyway,
Yeah,
I don't
why
know.
not? Why not?
Yeah.
Like, there's stranger things going on. Just allow it to be real. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, fellatio by spirit might fly in 2021. I'm just saying. You never can tell. I'm just throwing it out there to you. Got CG could do amazing things.
Exactly.
We see Winston getting hired in here, and the bit where she's quizzing him is
Yeah.
great because, and I had to get this down. And she's just like, she's interviewing him like this, and it's all like random. And you're thinking, how many people has she asked these questions of? Like she's got it all rehearsed.
Just going through the motions.
She says, do you believe in UFOs, astral projections, mental telepathy, ESP, clairvoyance, spirit photography, telekinetic movement, full trance mediums, the Loch Ness monster, and the theory of Atlantis? He says, if there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe anything you say.
What a line.
Great.
I love that they threw all of these like really weird, like really highbrow scientific terms in, and then Loch Ness monster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Loch Ness monster.
Just
Yeah,
out of the blue.
because that's on the same level as like hell dimension ghosts.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. And now that we know the bit about Eddie Murphy, in my head, I can hear Eddie Murphy saying, "No, listen, there's a steady paycheck," and like I can't do Eddie Murphy,
Yeah,
but I
I
could
get you.
totally hear him doing that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Peter finds Dana outside of, I guess the rehearsal hall or wherever it is she's at. What instrument does she play in this orchestra?
She's a music. It looks like maybe a cello.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
you're
it's a
right.
cello. Like it's a big kind of string instrument.
And when Peter's outside with the orange coat and he's doing like the Chuck Berry duck step or whatever you want to call that,
Yeah.
that made the previews also like a really quick random thing. And so he has to get info on what he saw or what she saw in the fridge and what's going on in her apartment.
It's like he's managed to find some info on like Zool or something like that.
Yeah. Back when
Yeah.
you had to actually go to a library.
Yeah, you can just Google it on your phone.
Yeah.
Not even have to physically type something in. Just go, okay, Google or Siri or whatever you're. Oh,
Yeah.
I say that literally.
Yep.
My phone has just reacted to that.
Yep. You ever say something close to the words "Hey Siri" and your phone goes, "Yes, I'm listening," and you're
Yeah,
like,
I'm listening.
"No,
Like,
what? No."
I don't want you to listen. Stop it. This is weird.
Yeah, like you can't say anything with the words in it, or she'll go, "Yes, what is it?" Like, relax. Jeez.
Calm down, darling. It's okay.
Yeah. What are you paid by the hour? Take it easy. God. It's funny because he tells you that Zul is a demigod worshipped around 6000 BC by the Hittites because he can't pronounce Hittite. She has to pronounce it for him. Mesopotamians and Sumerians, and she's like, "What does that mean?" He's like, "Well, Zul's really big with the Sumerians. He's really big in Samaria,
Yeah.
And she reads that Zul is the minion of Gozer, and so Peter's still it's all white noise to him. He's still trying to date her. Like he's still.
He's just like, I'm telling you this just
Yeah.
for the sake of it, but actually the real reason I'm here is for this.
And at this point, she said the word Zul long before he did.
Yep.
And now he's found proof in a book to back up her story, and he's still just like, whatever, Ghost, but how about I take you out? Like it's the only thing that matters to him.
Do you know what would have been cool? I know we keep kind of like tapping on this throughout, and we talk about backstory and we talk about context. When he talks about this whole Zul thing and Gozer and stuff, I like if this film was made nowadays, we'd have got like another little montage of a bit of a voiceover, maybe like some little animated sequence, and we see a bit of this backstory, a little bit of this history. Because hearing it, like you say, he kind of reels it off like he's just sort of going through the motions, and it doesn't mean anything to him. The only reason he's there is to get a date. It's just like, oh, well, this information, the reason that you've employed us and paid us money is playing second fiddle to the fact that I want to date you. But actually, if you listen to what he's saying, you're just like, because I love all this like mythological stuff and sort of sci-fi and this, that, and the other. And hearing what you say, you go, that sounds quite interesting. I'd quite like to see or hear like a little bit more on that. And again, maybe to give, when we get the eventual reveal of the antagonist, a little bit more backstory rather than just kind of like almost appear out of nowhere. That, because that's the only real bit of information we get about them.
You know what we've been doing since we started this thing here? We have been universe building when there was no universe to build, because this was just supposed to be a freaking movie.
Yeah.
But we're looking at it with the glasses of 2021 on, going, hey, we could do a whole universe out of this, and characters and backstory and prequels. And
what we've done is, because we've been spoiled, because we've been conditioned by the MCU, everything has to have a prequel now. Everything has to have a backstory. Nothing can be a standalone film anymore. It's like, yeah, well, they said that. I want to know more about that. Why is it not an entire film or a TV series about
right. I didn't see this on Disney Plus. Who's Zool? Yeah.
Yeah. Context, please.
Yeah. Give me something. Like, yeah, spoiled is the right word. Yeah. Yeah, God, that's a good way to put it. So basically, I think she says something to Ray to the effect of, he's applying for the position. Ray's like, great, you're hired. Come on. And he just hands him the trap, and the thing's smoking.
He's just like, oh, the hell do I do? What is this? Like,
and he shows him how to load into the system. He's like, when the light is green, the trap is clean. And they come up with these little random rhymes throughout the movie. And this is where we meet Walter Peck.
Walter Peck.
He's the villain, the Pecker himself. The villain, the heavy. He threatens Peter. Peter kind of blows him off, because what Peter does, like, show me the containment system. Like, well, you didn't say the magic word.
You didn't say the magic word.
Yeah. Like, and begrudgingly, he's like, please show me the containment unit. Yeah. And then we get to another great line of the film. Again, another very highly quotable moment when Egon talks about the Twinkie. Imagine this Twinkie. It represents all the psychokinetic energy in the New York area. It would be 35 feet long and weigh 600 pounds. And Winston hits him with, that's a big Twinkie. So another very quotable line.
Love that.
Stuff starts to get real. Zool is taking possession of Dana. And this is basically the third act is beginning, kicking off in grand fashion. It's time for these guys to put up or shut up. They've been busting ghosts all over the city. But now it's like you've reached the final boss, and Zool is a real deal. And, the Keymaster, Lewis, gets possessed by Gozer. Dana's possessed by Zool. I mean, and at one point, Peter says, oh, we got to get these two together. And Egon's like, no, it's a very bad idea. We should never do that. Like, because they can't be in the same room at the same time.
Nah, definitely not. I love the whole build up to that. So we get that transformation on the roof. We see Dana coming to her apartment just before she's due to have a date with Venkman, and she's trying to sneak past Lewis's apartment. And he comes out and obviously hears her, because he hears her every time she sneaks past the apartment. And she says, I've got a date. And he almost looks a little bit put out, but okay, whatever, cracks on. So she goes into her apartment. He locks himself out again, because of course he does. Of course he does. We get Dana in her apartment. She's on the phone to her mum, explaining that she's got a date. And then we see like the glowing of the outside of the door. And that's when we then see her get dragged into the shadow realm or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And we see that the dogs that are on top of the building have come to life. They're no longer statues, and they come to life. And then we cut into Lewis's party, where he's got loads of his different work colleagues there. And there was a little interesting tidbit I found out about that whole kind of party scene where he's in there and he's just like, oh, this is, Anne from accounts, and this is John from here, and this, that, and the other. That whole party scene where he's mingling with his guests is one continuous shot and almost entirely improvised as well.
Nice.
which is really, really cool. So it's just him kind of like bumbling about, picking up
Yeah.
people's jackets, saying, "Oh, you should try the salmon, and it costs this much," and blah 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 blah.
He tells the one guy, said, try the brie, it's room temperature. And you see the guy immediately start to spit it out. Like it
Yeah,
happens really fast. Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but the blonde that's dancing with him, I think is Casey Kasem's wife. I could
Oh,
have that
okay.
wrong. I think so. But
Huh.
she looks very familiar. And they were kind of an odd pairing because he was short with like greased black hair, sort of 50s haircut he had like most of his life. And then
Right.
she was like much bigger than her and taller and blonde. I think that's
Hmm.
who that is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So then we get him taking like the jacket of some of the guests, and he goes to throw it into the cupboard, which is his kind of like makeshift cloakroom. And there's one of the big demon dogs in there that's come to
Yeah.
life, and he chucks it in, and the jacket kind of drapes over his head. Um, and eventually the dog manages to escape, and it sort of goes through a bit of a rampage through town, doesn't it? And he
He says
finds
there's a bear in my apartment.
it's a bear in my apartment.
Yeah.
Comes barreling outside the front door past the kind of the hotel porter, and he finds himself outside the restaurant, doesn't he? And he's like, "Help, help! Like, let me in, let me in!" And he turns around and he's face to face with the dog, and you just hear that kind of squeak as he falls down the window as the dog's about to get him. And
And
it's
typical New York people don't care.
no one bats an eyelid. They look over and they go, "Who's this maniac outside?"
Yeah.
And then they just go back to eating their food like it's nothing.
It reminds me of Into the Spider-Verse when the moment happens and he and Peter are laying down and they're just walking by Miles like, "Great, stay classy, New York." They're just walking over him as if they're not there. Like, and I mistakenly referred to Lewis's character as Gozer, but it's actually Vince Clortho, which is the
Okay.
best name ever.
Nice.
Vince Clortho, the Keymaster.
Nice.
Yeah, and because he's looking for the gatekeeper and she's looking for the Keymaster. And so he even asked the horse, "Are you the gatekeeper?" Like he's asking everyone he comes into contact with.
Are you the keeper? Are
It
you
it's
the
funny how he kind of retains who he is, but she is like so
She's totally
possessed.
different, like way
Yeah.
out there. Yeah.
And
So we get
she's
go
more
on.
than hitting on Peter, by the way. She's crazy hitting on Peter.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, yes. He rocks up to her apartment, doesn't he, for the date, and she opens the door. It's clearly possessed, and it's all backlit, and she's got the
yes.
dress with the like the flowing dress. She's like, "Hi, are you the key master?" And he's
Yeah.
just like, not that I know of." And then the door just
She just
closes.
slams the door. Yeah.
It's like, "Well, I'll try again," and
Yeah.
knocks the door. "Are you the key master?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm a friend of his. He told me
Yes.
to meet him here."
And she lets him in.
And then we see the apartment's kind of covered in that weird sort of plasma snot stuff that we see when there's a ghost apparition, whatever name they want to call it.
Yeah.
Um, and she says that they're preparing for the arrival of, is it Gozer the Destructor? And she really comes onto him and sort of launches him onto the bed. Um, and she says, "Oh, I want you inside me." And he says, "You've already got at least two people in there. It might be a bit crowded."
Oh, that's great. What a great line.
And then we get that weird levitation stuff where she comes up off the bed. Interestingly, her weird sort of demonic voice that we hear when she becomes possessed, the actual voice acting is Ivan Reitman.
Nice. I did not
Yeah,
know that.
yeah. And then Gozer, the voice of Gozer that we hear, is by a British American actress called Paddy Edwards, who is
Wow.
famous for voices in Disney's Hercules, Little Mermaid. She was in Star Trek Next Generation. She was in
Interesting.
one of the Halloween films. So yeah, pretty cool, man.
That's cool.
101 Dalmatians TV series.
And we talked earlier about New York being a character. Like we're coming up on the moment where Winston and Ray are in the car and they're having. Isn't this where they're having conversations about the end of time?
That's it.
And
They
he's
start
quoting the
reciting the bits
Bible.
of the Bible. I really like that bit.
Yeah.
It's like kind of like almost like somber moment where there's just this kind of realization. He's sat there, kind of sat at the wheel with his cigarette, and he's just like, "Yeah, end of the world." Like and I can't remember what the exact line is, but it's just it reminds me of a little bit the scene in Pulp Fiction where Samuel L. Jackson quotes is it the line from like Ezekiel, whatever it
Yep.
is,
Yep.
and it's that whole thing where he like Winston quotes it, and it's like it's kind of quiet, and you hear him say it, and it's just the way he delivers it really slowly, and just like, oh, okay, I can see like things are going to kick off here. Like this is big. This is now building to the climax. Like now I understand the implications of what's happened. Just
And
the way that he
Winston
delivers it.
and Winston seems to be more of a believer in the actual
Yeah.
literal translation of this.
Winston's only been there for like a week, and already like he's like, yeah, I believe in all of this. And
Yeah.
yet, when the three of them first encountered Dana, they were just like, yeah, no, that's rubbish. What you on
Yeah, yeah,
about?
yeah.
And Winston's just like, yeah, no, I'm 100% invested in this.
Well, when Peck comes back to shut the place down and to turn off the storage facility, like, you know, all right. So to play devil's advocate, again, if I'm living in New York and this thing is actually happening, I might be questioning what is this really? I don't know if I can blame the guy. I mean, you've got these weird looking dudes telling you this is a bad idea. There's these things are locked up for a reason, that kind of
Hmm.
thing. And is he an idiot? Yeah, he's a friggin' idiot. But at the same time, I don't know how much I can hate the guy for just being ignorant. You know what I
Is it?
mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because he like he's there with who's he turn up with? Is it like the local, not sheriff, but the local like
He's with a
he-
cop and a dude in
head
a
of
hard
police, and
hat.
like some electrician guy, and he's like, shut it down. And the guy's like, I've never seen anything like this before. Like, I'm not really too happy with shutting it down. He's like,
Yeah.
just do it.
Yeah.
He comes just like, yeah, it's gonna be pretty dangerous if you do that.
You think that's dress code for electricians in New York? You got a gray zip hoodie, a blue hard hat, and a tool belt, worn like a gunslinger. Like,
Standard, like
yeah,
cookie cutter New York electrician.
yeah, that's a dress code. And what's funny is Egon's blocking the thing, and Rick Moranis is behind him, like sniffing his arm and stuff. It's so good.
Rick Moranis in this weird kind of possessed role where he's still partly himself and a little bit possessed. Because there's the moment, like the scene before, where they work out that he's he's the key master.
Hmm.
Well, no, sorry, the gatekeeper,
Gatekeeper, yeah,
and just like he's sat there with that like bowl of popcorn, and he's just sort of sniffing the popcorn, and then he picks up the piece of pizza. He just starts rubbing it on his
yeah.
face,
He
and it's
drinks
that.
the water out of the coffee pot.
That's it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then even in this bit where like Egon stood there and he's sort of behind him, just like, what are you doing? I'm not entirely convinced that they didn't give him any direction for that. And they just went, just be a bit weird.
Yeah,
Just
just be weird.
just do what you feel you want to do in the moment. He's just there.
It's funny because when they're downstairs where the containment unit is, and Peck is telling the cop, if he gets physical, shoot him.
That's it. Yeah,
And the
yeah, yeah.
cop gets mad, he's like, don't tell me how to do my
Don't tell me how
job.
to do
Kind of
my
thing.
job.
And the electrician moves in to turn it off, and Egon gives him that look like boom. Like
Right.
he's doing that.
Oh, you gone done effed up. Like
Yeah.
so yeah, it gets shut down, and Dana wakes up because earlier when Venkman was in there, and he says, oh, I'm here with her, but I've given her a sedative and
Yeah.
she'll be out. And Dana eventually wakes up, and this whole shutting down of the ghost containment thing is what wakes her up, and we see the ghost flying out the top of the building and stuff like that. And then Peck announces that he wants them arrested, and we see, as I say, that whole montage of kind of these spirits and stuff going through the city, and another little montage of the there's a ghost sort of skeleton zombie looking thing that's kind of driving a taxi, and
Yeah, that's
this, that,
gruesome
and the
too.
other. Like, yeah, man. And my notes here say Dana is tripping the light fantastic, which
Oh.
I don't know if that's a universal phrase or just a British phrase, but
No, it
just
is. Yeah.
tripping the light fantastic.
No, it totally is.
Eventually her apartment sort of blows up in the midst of all this chaos of all the ghosts escaping and stuff like that. And Peck gets his wish where the Ghostbusters are arrested, and we see them then in a prison cell surrounded by all of these inmates, where they've got the blueprints for the building, and it's revealed that the building is a superconductor built for basically channeling ghosts. And they go into a little bit about the background of the building, the architect of the building, um, and as I can't remember who says it, but they just go basically, so the building that she lives in is spook central. I think
And
that
when the purple energy is blasting up through the roof of the building, where all the spirits are getting out, there is a
mm,
billboard to the left of the firehouse that says "Stay Puft Marshmallows."
nice,
It's a
nice.
worn down old billboard, but it's there. So later on, when Ray gets it in his head, you can't
Mhm.
blame him because he walked, like,
Just so
drove
he
past
walks
it every
straight
day.
out every day.
Yeah.
Brilliant. They they talk about the architect of the building, the guy called Ivo Shandor, I think,
Yes.
and they go a little bit into the background of that. And again, like that'd be something cool to kind of hear a little bit more about and tap into. But they say that he followed a particular religion and started this kind of like cult and stuff like that, and had all of these followers, which is why the building then essentially became this kind of conductor for channeling spirits and stuff like that. And Egon starts to kind of spin a yarn, as it were, and really go in depth into this backstory. And it's a really funny moment where we see a lot of the inmates that weren't necessarily interested before start to kind of like, I'm going to drop in an ear to this. I'm a little
Yeah.
bit
Yeah.
more interested. Like
Yeah.
all of these just kind of degenerates, convicts, or whatever they are, sort of thing. Like, oh, it sounds interesting. And it basically turns out that it's the prediction of the end of the world is coming true, which is what Winston and Ray were discussing earlier, a scene or two before, when we saw them driving across the bridge and reciting verses from the Bible. Um, then one of the police officers approaches the cell and says, "The mayor wants to see you. Like the mayor wants to see the Ghostbusters," and that's their kind of like get out of jail free card. The mayor wants to see you. Like this
Because
has
the
come from
mayor's on
high
it.
up.
The only thing the mayor knows is because doesn't someone tells him it's an election year, and
Yeah.
and he's the only one that's on their side, and he shuts down Peck in a heartbeat.
Hmm.
And basically just wants to go do the thing, and that's when Peter delivers the famous "Cats and dogs leave it together. It's mass hysteria."
Oh, mate, that line there where he's just in the mayor's office, and we get the line before where he's like, "Oh, I think it's Ray that refers to Peck as like dickless," and he
Yes,
just goes, "Is
Dickless
this true?"
Wonder.
He's like, "Yes, this is true. This man has no dick." And then like we get Winston, like the believer, like gets to approach like the mayor's desk, and he's just like, "Well, what do you think about it?" He's like, "I've seen shiz that'll turn you white." And then
Yeah, yeah.
we get Venkman's line like mass hysteria, like dogs and cats living together in mass hysteria. Um, Incidentally, that line was voted the number 68 of the top 100 greatest movie lines in, I think, 2006, 2007.
Wow.
I imagine it would still be fairly high up, but that's a pretty iconic line.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Because
pretty
in my
cool line.
head, I just imagined number one being "I'll be back."
I mean, yeah, that's got to be top
Do
10.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
yeah. Um, After this, the mayor then ejects Peck from the office. Like, basically, it's kind of a, are you gonna keep them locked up, or do you believe us, sort of thing? And he ejects Peck, reinstates the Ghostbusters, and then we get that really cool shot of them being given the kind of the military, what's it called? Kind of like
Like
road
an escort.
escort. That's the word. Yeah, the
Yeah.
military escort down the street with police and stuff, and crowd going wild. People out in their droves, kind of waiting to see them. And the apartment building that Dana and Lewis are in starts to break up. They rock up. They're like, "Yeah, Ghostbusters are here," and they look up, look up to the top of the building, see what's going on. And the road starts to break up, and they all fall through, and the crowd thinks that, oh, that's it. They're done for. And they manage to crawl out, and they're like, we're okay. It's fine. It's fine. And then that's when we go into the big finale, if you like. And they start that slow walk up the stairs, because obviously the elevators are out. So they have to go up the entire staircase, and they start the
Of
slow,
course.
slow walk up there, and they're all absolutely exhausted.
Oh, yeah. I was looking up the soundtrack here because um, cleaning up the town, saving the day. I think "Saving the Day" was when they played with that montage, wasn't it?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you.
Because the Bobby Brown song jumped into my head, and I'm pretty sure they used that.
I love
for
that
part
song,
two.
but that's in the second one.
Yeah, it is a good song.
I love that song.
Take Control. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
So yeah, they head up the staircase. They get into Dana's apartment, and they see like a wall kind of blown out, and there's a second staircase that goes up, and that eventually sort of goes onto the rooftop where we get the big finale. A little fact about that rooftop setup, just as they go up for that, the big finish of the film, the final countdown, the final confrontation, if you like, between Gozer and the Ghostbusters, that took up an entire soundstage at Columbia Pictures.
Wow.
And it had 50,000 amps of electricity for them to light the entire thing. And whilst they filmed it, with it being kind of the studio space for Columbia, they obviously have their various stages and stuff like that.
Right.
They had to shut down every other stage whilst that scene was being filmed because it sucked up that much power to light it.
That's awesome.
Really, really cool, man. Again, I love these little tidbits, these little snacky snacks.
Yeah, the behind the scenes stuff is awesome. I'm sure we've got the answer at some level, but who's the actress that plays Gozer, like the real life Gozer here?
I'm not sure, but I read something somewhere that they tried to base her on a sort of David Bowie, like androgynous looking kind of character.
I see that.
Here we go. Slavica Jovan, born in Yugoslavia. She's known for Ghostbusters, House on Haunted Hill from 1999, and a film called Body Double in 1984.
Wow.
Doesn't look like she did a whole lot of other stuff, really.
No.
Ghostbusters seems to be her most recognizable role. Last thing she did was a very, very minor role in 2015 in a film called Night of Cups. But yeah, aside from that, yeah.
Yeah, because it seemed to me when I first saw this movie, and maybe it took a couple of viewings as a kid to figure out what was going on, I actually thought this was Sigourney Weaver with a haircut.
Oh, really?
Yeah. For some reason, as a kid, I'm like, well, that's her. And I'm like, wait a minute, that can't be her. Is it? Because didn't she and Rick Moranis, they both took their place?
They turned into the dog. They run up. They go either side, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, they turn into those demon dogs. Then we get Gozer coming out. Ray tries to be kind of diplomatic when Gozer says, "Are you a god?" That famous line, "Are you a god?" And he says, "No." And then they just get absolutely zapped. And I think she says something along the lines of like, "You shall perish" or something like that. And then they try with the lasers. They try with their guns, and Gozer manages to kind of do a bit of parkour to evade that. And they realize, actually, it's not going to be that easy. And I think it's Venkman that says, "She's a nimble little minx, isn't she?"
Yeah.
Like they try and shoot her down. And then they try for a second time and they think they've got her, and she disappears and the building starts to crumble and fall apart around them. And then we get that voice. And I love this line. It's not necessarily an iconic line that you put in, but it's something that, as a wrestling fan, as both of us are, it's something that one of my wrestling friends, a guy that wrestles, uses a lot of his promo stuff. And she says, "Choose the form of the destructor." Whenever I think of "choose the form of the destructor," I just think of Samoa Joe, but that's just me.
Yeah.
But it's basically, they realize what that means. They like, okay, well, whatever you first think of, that's going to be what pops up. And so Venkman's like, clear your head. Like, don't think of anything. Whatever we think of, that's going to come true. They all manage to do it apart from Ray. Ray's the only one that can't clear his head. And then there's the realization of, okay, you thought something, didn't you? Ray's like, it just popped in there.
Yeah,
Peter's
because
like, what? What just popped in there?
you hear the walking as if Godzilla has arrived,
Mm.
and I'm pretty sure they kept this under wraps before the movie was released. But when you realize it's him, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and he's coming around the corner with that big dopey smile on his face.
Like,
Oh, he's like a big Muppet, isn't he?
yeah,
Oh,
Pillsbury Doughboy.
yes.
I love the line. Well, there's something you don't see every day.
Another highly quotable line from this movie.
Yeah, man. And then they obviously bring out the like what's the technical name for the guns again? I keep calling them like the photon packs, whatever they call them.
Positron Collider.
I'm just going to call them the colliders. They bring
Yeah.
out the big old collider guns.
Yes.
And they try and essentially like toast him like a marshmallow. And that doesn't seem to be working. And then Egon goes back on his word. And says, we need to cross the streams. He's like, don't cross the streams. He's like, no. We need to cross the streams. The one thing I told you not to do, yeah, do it. So we get that. They cross the
Oh, man.
streams and everything goes to hell.
Yeah.
Turns out that it works though, because it blows everything the hell up. And everyone gets covered in marshmallow.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically Walter Peck, because if anyone deserved to get covered in that, it's him.
Oh, of course. He deserved to be stepped on, but unfortunately that didn't happen.
Nah, that's a shame.
Yeah. What about this finale to a comedy / supernatural / action film? It seems like a fitting end.
Of course it does. I mean, it's got sci-fi, it's got horror, it's this, that, and the other, but ultimately it is a comedy. And we said at the start, you've got Ray, this character that kind of has all of the know-how, but ultimately is a bit haphazard.
Yeah.
And a little bit dim, a little bit silly.
Yeah.
And of course it was him that chose the form of the Destructor. And of course the form of the Destructor was something really silly. Something that wasn't a King Kong, a Godzilla, or whatever you have. It's just a massive marshmallow. And so of course that had to be the big boss.
Yeah.
The final boss, if you like.
Yeah.
Massive, but very silly. It's fitting. It's perfect. It's hilarious.
Man, go back to branding. If this had been an actual brand,
oh man,
this thing were on the stock market, it would have exploded at that point.
I don't know how, and I haven't looked up, to be honest. I don't know how someone hasn't come out and just done them as a brand.
That's a great question.
Or why someone at the time just went, okay, that's taken off. Because there were how many years in between Ghostbusters 1 and 2? Like 5 years?
I think so.
84 and 89, second one. How did someone in between not go, right, Stay Puft Marshmallows, copyright that, make it a thing?
Because you know what happened now, for sure.
Hotcakes nowadays, yeah. That's all they need to do. And the thing is, like you say, that happened nowadays for sure. They'd put something in a film today. It would garner all of the interest. Next day, someone would copyright it.
So get this. In fact, it was. Let's see. Stay Puft Marshmallows now exist, according to a story from August 27, 2010. And it took that long. Yeah, it took that long. The Parallax Corporation, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. The film franchise has been Stay Puft Marshmallow Man as he appeared being a mascot of Stay Puft quality marshmallows, produced by the Parallax Corporation in 2012, and a licensed food product of the Ghostbusters franchise.
Damn.
Yeah.
Definitely took them long enough.
No kidding.
2010.
Yeah.
Come on, this came out in 84.
And you can actually get this online. $20. Stay Puft Marshmallows from Ghostbusters, made real, $19.99.
All right. Yeah. I'm going to be searching me some of those, roasting them over my fire this winter.
Oh, that's good stuff,
some
man.
s'mores. Why not?
So at the time this happened, and man, we've talked a lot about Marvel because God, it has that feel to me. Like
Mm,
again, New York being a character, they're applauded at the end. They save the day. They save the city. Uh, how long until we started hearing about a sequel? Because as I'm going back into my head, I don't remember. I wonder if it was automatic. Were they waiting on, let's see if this thing is a hit first?
yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, I wasn't old enough to even. I was when this film came out. I was -1.
Oh, wow.
When the second one came out, I was 4. So I
Right.
don't know. Um, like you say, it could have been a whole. Well, we've got an idea for a second one. Let's see how the first one does.
Right.
Or was it a we've only got intentions to do a first one? Oh, okay, this did really well. Let's write a second one. I don't know.
It's a good question. I mean, it was successful right out the gate. This movie made
Mm,
money and was, a lot of it's thanks to the marketing that was spot
yeah.
on through the whole thing. They teased people to death with this thing, with just the logo for the longest time.
Hmm.
But man, it did exceptionally well. We talked about the animated series. It ran for 140 episodes, which I had no idea it ran that long.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was followed by a sequel series in 97 called Extreme Ghostbusters. Um, a film sequel, which we'll probably never do part two here on the show, unless just it's just something we feel like doing. But um, man, there's been some disparities between a part one and a part two before, but not
Hmm.
for me in a long time as compared to part one and part two of this film franchise. And we don't have to get too much into it, but man, part two for me didn't have the charm, it didn't have the heart, and it was something missing. And I don't know what it was, but I don't know. I didn't hate part two, but I don't know. I guess because we had never seen anything like this before, and then you get more of what you've never seen before, and then well, I've seen this already, and they didn't really
Mm.
give me anything new. It was kind of the same thing again.
It was. It was more the same thing. My saving grace, if you like, of the second film was the bad guy. I felt that
Vigo,
was more for Vigo. I thought was a more compelling bad guy than in the
yeah,
first film. Everything else around it felt fairly kind of like copy and paste, I guess, if you like.
yeah,
But the bad guy, I like that. It felt like they tapped into a bit more backstory. Because like the bad like the antagonist in this one just almost came out of nowhere. It's just like, oh yeah, the guy that designed this building was some religious nut, and that's what it's about. Whereas
right,
this one, we had what was his name? Who was Dr. Janos, the guy that worked there, and he saw the portrait the whole time, and it was the
right,
portrait that came to life.
right.
There was a bit more backstory there. I really
True.
enjoyed that. And also, another standout moment from the second one was the when they controlled the Statue of Liberty with a NES controller, with a gaming controller.
I mean, see, you like that. For me, even as a kid, I'm like, because even as a kid who enjoyed sci-fi, in the other part of my brain that enjoys other things too, I'm thinking, now look, this thing doesn't actually have legs. This is a statue. So the thing couldn't actually walk. So how are they getting this thing to move? It would have cracked under the pressure. It would have fallen apart. So I'm in the theater going, wait a minute now, as if I'm a scientist or a structural engineer, which obviously I'm not. So it kind of took me out of the moment. But for some reason, a Stay Puft
I was,
Marshmallow Man
I was
coming to
just
life
about
was
to
more
say, you
believable.
you say that, but a giant marshmallow coming to life was absolutely feasible. That's
Oh,
fine.
of
Yeah, yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah. As opposed to something with an
That
actual face
that's already there.
that's already there. No,
Yeah.
I'm not into that.
Yeah.
Marshmallows, yeah, yeah, stack them up 100 feet.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Entirely realm of possibility.
I,
Um,
I I get what you mean. The second one didn't have the same charm. There were little moments, little nuances in there where I enjoyed it. On the whole,
yeah,
the first one is leagues above.
because there's ever only going to be one part one of the Matrix. ever.
Mm. Yeah,
I'm interested to see how the new movie looks. By the
I
time
am.
I release this, I don't know where we're at in the timeline, but um, there's only ever going to be one, the first one.
Mm. Mm.
And then everything after that is a continuation. There's only ever going to be one first part of the Ghostbusters. So,
Hmm.
like, everything after that is in an effort to live up to what they did in the first movie.
Yeah.
Um, Having said that, we've been teasing during the course of this episode here that they tried to revisit this many times. Part three was a very real possibility. God knows how many times, to the
Hmm.
point of they had a script, they had yeses, and they something at the last second stopped it. I think a strike happened somewhere in the years during all this, trying to get this thing made. Um, Again, not something to get too deep in the weeds on. We don't have to. The redo. I am on the record as saying I have no problem with an all female cast. I didn't have a problem with the idea of an all female cast. But when I found out these women are not related to the original Ghostbusters, not only are they not related, this is not the original Ghostbusters universe. I thought, then why are we making this movie?
What's the point? Yeah.
What's the point?
I'll be honest, I've not watched that one because I didn't want it to tarnish the original. And it was
Yeah,
for me, and as you say, it's a really difficult one nowadays because you can't say anything without offending someone somewhere.
sure.
I've got no issue with an all-female cast.
No,
I watched Pitch Perfect the other day. That's an all-female cast. That's an
right,
amazing film. I love
right.
it. I watched Bridesmaids the other week. All-female cast.
Good
Absolutely
movie.
love it. I've got no issue with an all-female cast. However, this whole remaking, rebooting something for the sake of it, just to have an all XYZ cast, you're just ticking boxes. Like, didn't they do, was it Ocean's 11 or Ocean's 12? Like, I would do it with an all-female cast. Like,
Hmm.
why?
Yeah,
You're just doing it to tick a box. You're not doing it because it's part of the lore or the canon of the film. You're doing it to tick a box. You're doing it to please this group of people or that. Like, if you're going to tap into some of the history of the film, if you're going to make it part of the timeline, okay, I get it. But just doing it for the sake of going, oh, do you know what? We did all female Ghostbusters, but it's got absolutely nothing to do with anything else. Like, nah, no,
yeah.
not for me. And that's why I can't bring myself to watch it. And I'm glad I haven't because all I've heard from any reviews since it came out is it's absolutely terrible. But I've not
And
watched it, so it's difficult for me to sit here and go, oh yeah, it's rubbish. And obviously, I haven't seen it, but you can only go by what you hear reviews, and I've not heard a single positive review about it.
nobody, because there's nothing really positive to review, and it's almost like, well, we can't connect this universe. Why? Well, because we don't want to. We want to redo it. And the thought is, if this thing is a hit, we can get 4 movies out of this.
Hmm.
But still, you have a built-in fan base. You have a built-in fan base who now have kids,
Hmm.
and they'll take their kids. But by saying we don't care about your built-in fan base, we're going to redo it, the built-in fan base isn't going to go. And if they do go, they're not going to be happy. So it's,
No.
for me, it's not about placating a bunch of white middle-aged dudes, which, I like to voice my opinion and stuff, but I have to take it with a grain of salt because I hear a lot of middle-aged white guys giving their opinions. And most time, as my middle-aged white guy, I want to say, I've heard enough. Shut up now. So I don't want to join the chorus and be that guy.
Yeah.
But like you said, at the same time, this is not what it was intended to be. And not only that, how many of them are there? There's 4.
Hmm.
Interesting. Oh, one of them is African American.
Oh,
Why didn't all
why?
4 of them be African American? Why?
Exactly.
You see, like, well, we have to. She's the brain. She's the wise mouth. There's African American.
Hmm.
Why are we doing that? Like, why don't we just? It's like, well, we have to fulfill the roles. No, you don't. If you're going to
No,
redo the whole thing.
exactly. It's just like almost like as I say, a box ticking exercise.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on, we've got to have an African American. Oh, we've got to have a really attractive, smart one. Oh, we've got to have I hate to use the term, but like Melissa McCarthy is generally typecast as the kind of the overlooked, slightly overweight, wisecracking kind of role
Mm-hmm.
in most of the films she's in. And it was exactly the same thing in, and as I say, I've not seen it, but just put in there, and from the trailers I saw, it was the same role that it feels like she plays in every other film.
Yeah.
And it was just like a kind of you've not done anything new here. You followed a blueprint of not for me.
I don't get it either. And it's like the cast are fans of the original and wanted to be in it. Plus, they want to act and they want to make something funny, and they thought everything was cool. And the backlash sucked, and people are idiots and morons. And Leslie Jones left Twitter at the time because of it, because people suck.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, let me get this straight. You're going to bash the cast over something they didn't write, something they didn't produce, something they didn't edit, something they didn't hire for. All they did was act in it, but you're going to bash them for that. That makes little to no sense at all.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Just shooting the messenger, almost like they're not the messenger, but they're the messenger in a sense that they're just acting out what they've been told to do.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I don't get that at all. So a missed opportunity, but something that's not a missed opportunity is Afterlife. What have you heard, and what do you know about what's going to happen in Afterlife, man?
I mean, I've seen the trailer, and I am very, very excited.
Yeah.
A little part of me, and I don't know if it's because it has the same actor that's in Stranger Things, but I just get a very Stranger Things vibe about it. Like, group of young kids discover something quite spooky. Madness ensues. And I'm fine with that, because Stranger Things was awesome. And I absolutely loved it.
Loved it.
And also, it's got Paul Rudd, who, if he didn't have a beard, could probably be classed as one of the younger cast members because he doesn't age.
And isn't it funny? We've spent this entire episode talking about the MCU, and guess who's in Afterlife?
Yeah, exactly.
Ant-Man
there
himself.
We go. Crossover confirmed.
Yeah, no kidding. Ant-Man himself is in Afterlife. That's pretty darn cool.
I'm really excited. I think it looks cool. I think it clearly pays homage to the original. We see Ecto-1 in the trailer. We get Dan Aykroyd reprising his role as a little kind of nod at the very, very end of the trailer. It's directed by the original director. This feels like it may not be the third one that we've alluded to that could have happened at some point. But if there's going to be any kind of sequel, this is the one that feels like it's kind of most deserving of it. If there's going to be anything else that comes out that's Ghostbusters related, let's ignore the last one that came out. This feels like a what's the word? Kind of a spiritual successor, if you like.
Spiritual, pun intended.
Yeah, spirit. There we go.
Yeah,
making puns, and I don't even realize.
Yes, that's a master at work, kids. Yeah, that's okay. So let's do a bit of speculation here. We've rebooked this whole film that's a classic for whatever reason we did it, and even made a prequel at the same time, folks. You can't beat that. So let's book this thing moving forward. Do you continue, assuming this thing is a hit? And what I've read is that early screenings of this thing, people are wowed and say it's freaking great. So if this thing takes off like we think it will, I mean, what are we looking at moving forward? Are we looking at 2-3 more movies? Are they gonna, do you know what I mean? Do we just keep expanding, or what do we do here?
I know we've fantasy booked a lot of stuff throughout this, and I still really like that idea of, okay, there's a Ghostbusters kind of division in lots of places around the world. And so we don't necessarily, if there's more films that come off this, we don't necessarily get here's a sequel to the same people from the first film.
Right.
Here's a sequel in that it's a Ghostbusters film.
Yeah.
But here's a group of Ghostbusters in a different country, and this is what they have to deal with.
Yeah.
And then maybe, so I don't know. And again, we've been conditioned through the MCU, but maybe a culmination of that. Maybe we get 2 or 3 films. Maybe we get a Ghostbusters from like each continent.
Ooh.
And then we get that in a culmination of, okay, like now it's a global thing. Now there's this all-powerful force, and the 3 or 4 kind of Ghostbusters units that we've seen from each kind of continent or whatever have to come together to take that out. I'd quite like that.
Yeah.
It will never happen. I'd really like to see it though.
I don't say never, dude. The major studios
the major studios not named Disney are looking for shared universe.
Mm.
There was
Oh,
supposed to
they really
be,
are.
yeah, the shared monster universe, which never got off the ground.
No, and man, that really could have had some wheels, some traction.
They had
Was
plans.
was that the one for? So I know there was a few mentioned, like so there was the Luke Evans version of Dracula.
Hmm.
Wasn't that meant to be the start of a shared universe?
And I wasn't Johnny Depp going to be the Invisible Man, I think, somewhere
I
in
think
there.
so. Yeah, yeah.
Tom Cruise was on board with the Mummy, I
That
guess,
was
and
it.
it's
Yeah, the Mummy, Dracula, Invisible Man, all part of a shared universe thing.
yeah,
Obviously, Warner Brothers have tried the same thing with the DC universe, and I still don't feel that's really gotten off the ground
no,
properly. Like saying that, like the little tease for Black Adam looks kind of cool.
yeah.
The tease for the Flash looks kind of cool. The new Batman trailer looks kind of cool, but just doesn't really seem to have legs. But as you say, a lot of like production studios and stuff now are looking at starting to build an expanded universe. I'd love to see a Ghostbusters expanded universe. I'd like to see them really tap into a lot of the history of it. Like we've said numerous times, like seeing a lot of the backstory of the events that happened in this film, seeing the same sort of thing across the world, seeing them eventually come together. I think it could be really, really cool.
I mean, I totally envision this thing happening. I just don't know why it couldn't. I mean, if it's the money's there, the interest is there, and the story's there, and it's good, and the actors are on board, and it's God, you could take this thing in so many directions.
Mm,
So many different ways of showing ghosts. To me, there's untapped things here. Like, as much as I'm in the bag for comic book movies, and I always will be because I'm a comic book guy, but at some point down the line, the typical origin story of this is why he started, this is how he got the power, this is why he wears the cape. That's
hmm.
great. But eventually, a lot of people are going to say, well, I've seen this to
Yeah.
some degree, but you can do Ghostbusters in so many different ways.
So many different ways. Like I'd love to say, as I said earlier on, like if you had a kind of a division in each country, you had one in like Italy, and you had like a Vatican, like something in the Vatican City, and you
Yeah.
get a real different aesthetic of Ghostbusters. They're not just typical guys in these suits. Like these are guys that are kind of like part of the Catholic Church.
Mm.
And so they like their uniform could still maintain part of that outfit, and
Yes.
we go into like a load of the backstory of like the church and Catholicism and this, that, and the other, and you put a different spin on it like that. You could then go to like Africa and you could tap into
Ooh.
this, that, and do you know what I mean? Like there's so much. You could tap
Yeah.
into like Australasia and look into like Australian culture, and you could have like some Maori influence or like some indigenous like stuff, like Aborigine stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's so much.
Yeah.
So much. I think that could be really, really cool. Really
Man,
cool.
we got a great idea on our hands here. So Aykroyd's the man to get on the phone. We're going to make that happen.
I'll at him on Twitter and be like, dude, I've got an idea.
Where
Come
do you
talk
hear
to
this
us.
pitch? Yeah. You've never heard a pitch before, Dan, have you? Have we got a pitch for you, pal? Yeah. That's good stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
man.
can totally envision that happening. And dude, you could even shut up. Men in Black. I'm thinking Men in Black, where it's like you take that overseas like they did, and they're
Mm,
doing different. Oh man, because yeah,
yeah.
that's great.
Yeah. It would be awesome. And as
Yeah,
I say, like, if it wasn't for the MCU, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But the
very true.
MCU's spoilt us in that, oh, we can have we can have 5 origin films and all of those people can come together.
Yeah.
And then we can expand off that.
And you mentioned Africa. That one of the great things about the MCU. Hey, I'm not going to be shy. One of the M's in the 6M is Marvel, for God's sake. I'm not going to
Hmm.
apologize for talking about it.
Yes,
But
sir.
one of the great things about it, you mentioned Africa, that made me think of Wakanda. No matter how many times people could say, this stuff's going to burn out, they've done this, Eternals is on the verge of coming out. And by the
Hmm.
way, it's gotten really good reviews from what I've read.
Hmm.
It's a completely different spin on the MCU.
Yeah.
And so if you're into cosmic interstellar, that might be your bag. If you're an African American kid wanting to see yourself represented, Black Panther.
Hmm.
If you like the idea of a super soldier in the 40s, Captain America. If you like
Spy thriller, espionage. If you're
yes.
a like a Asian Oriental, like kid, whatever, young adolescent, Shang-Chi, like
Yep.
covers all the bases.
If you like Star Wars, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Exactly.
Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff. They've got they continuously bring different characters with different origins, different backstories, and different situations, different set of villains, different set of sidekicks, different set of backgrounds to the table. And that's why the MCU for me can go on for another 20 years, I think, where it's just
Easily.
man, yeah.
Yeah.
It
Really,
just
really
makes you
good.
it makes you wonder, does Ghostbusters have enough of a well, maybe they don't right now, but if they started, they would have enough of a 5 years, 10 years from now where they could really draw upon it, you
Tease
know?
into it. Like, again, we've been spoilt with Marvel stuff with these post-credit scenes.
Yeah.
Imagine a post-credit scene at the end of Afterlife where we see some spiritual happenings in another country, but we get an African equivalent of Egon or Ray,
Ooh.
and they go, right, and we see
Yeah.
that, and we go, oh,
Oh,
okay. They can
I
do it.
love
It would be
that.
incredible. It would be so good.
And all
I'd
it would
love to
take
see that.
all it would take is one of them on an iPad or on a phone going, "Did you see what just happened in New York?"
Yeah,
And they go, "What? Well, that happened. Look," and they look
that's
out their
happened
window and
here.
it's happening right then.
And
And
then,
you're like, "Oh
bosh,
my God." Yes.
Ghostbusters will
Whoosh.
return.
Yeah, yeah. And you can't just fade to black. You hit to black and get out.
Yeah,
Leave them wanting more. That's good.
just dangling that carrot.
Yes. Man, this is a winner chicken dinner right here. I
Absolutely.
love it. Well, the title of this episode wasn't the Ghostbusters Shared Universe. The title of this was Ghostbusters. So we have done our job, kids. We have reviewed the film, talked a bit about what a great prequel it would make, talked about sequels, a shared universe, a bit about part 2, a bit about the unfortunate redo. I don't know what more you can ask for. So there you have Ghostbusters. So, Troy, we're going to take this thing home, my friend. So give me your last word on Ghostbusters.
It's an absolute classic. And I feel like it gets better with every watch. Like there's little nuances that I pick up on every time I watch it, and it's just outstanding. And it's a good blend of absolutely everything: comedy, sci-fi, horror, just everything ticks all of the boxes, and it's an outstanding watch. And if you're listening to this and you've never watched it, have a word with yourself and go and watch it, then re-listen to this and then at us and agree with us.
Yes. I couldn't have said it better. That's absolutely 100% true. And it's, I do think there's a lot to draw here from the future. I'm so glad Afterlife's coming out, but let's say Afterlife comes out and bombs. As I kick this thing off with today here, kids, it's okay because no one's going to take the original away from you. You don't have wacky George Lucas going to redo it and add special effects and more stormtroopers and a different alien. You don't have to worry about any of that. We've got the original, and hopefully we'll always have it. As God intended, we should always have it. So, yes, it's an instant classic. Love everything about it. It gets better with time, and I'll enjoy it, I'm sure, for years to come. And that is Ghostbusters. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.